Hello, everyone. Welcome to my teaching learning session. We continue with BPCS 185 with me, developing emotional competency with Sonal Singh Pawar. We continue with block 2 today, and we are going to start with unit 3. Knowing that emotions, emotional intelligence is so important and competence equally, which are two different things, we need to understand what are the components of emotional competencies. So, this unit is completely dedicated as unit 3 of components of emotional competency. So we are going to talk about smaller aspects of what emotional competency actually comprises of. So the unit will comprise of the introduction. We will also learn what are emotional competencies. We will talk about the competency model, the emotional competencies that we will learn about, which is we will talk about what is self-awareness, what is self-regulation, what is self-motivation, social awareness, and social skills. Recognition and understanding of emotions in oneself and others. And what does it mean to identify and understand emotions? It's so important to do that in emotional awareness in oneself, emotional awareness in others, and how do we express these emotions. So, it's going to talk about the universality of emotional expression. So, this unit is completely dedicated to competencies of emotional nature. Speaking and moving ahead, we talk about social competency. Social competency, apart from this, what would it refer to? When we talk about emotional competency, let's focus on something which is very closely related to emotional competency, which is social competency. Social competency is something that refers to, an individual's ability to connect with other people. It's an individual's ability to get associated with other people, recognize not only your emotions, but majorly other people's emotions. Social as term, wherever it comes, we need to be understood of the fact that it's going to be associating to the others and responding to others in an appropriate manner. The components that fall in the area of social competency are social awareness, empathy, and social skills. We will elaborate these terms ahead. Now, moving to the unit of 3.5, let's understand recognizing and understanding of emotion in oneself and others. I feel we talk about competency, which is something which is a competence, which is an ability for a person to understand something, and that only happens when we are thriving in that sphere or in that area. So, when we talk about emotional competency, recognition of emotion is paramount. So, recognition of emotion is one of the most important things that you should do in your own self before we justify, label, appraise the kind of emotion that we are feeling. So identify emotion is, as said, is one of the most core of being an emotionally intelligent person. So when we are speaking of being emotionally intelligent, we need to know, we need to be aware of what are we feeling, accurately identifying emotion. So that suggests understanding that you're feeling sad should be understood appropriately in that pattern of feeling sad, not angry. So recognition is paramount. Accurately identifying it when in oneself is one of the most crucial skills in today's times also. We see it in children, we see it in adolescent, and we identify that children today are not able to identify with basic emotions that they have. They're not able to understand what is happiness, how do we express it in joy, what is sadness, what is enviness, and they confuse most of the emotion in terms of temper tantrums or aggression. So, recognition accurately is a crucial skill for all of us. It needs to happen in your own inner world so that you can incorporate it in your social world also. So, if you're better equipped with identified what are you feeling today, I'm sure you're able to identify what other people are feeling in your social world. So, emotion contain data, signal about us, and important events. Also, accurate identification of emotion is not only critical to success and happiness, but in certain circumstances to very survival of an individual. It is equally important for the survival of you, the maintenance of you, and the fulfillment of us also. Speaking of what are emotional competencies, so knowing what was social competency is about we being with others. Now, emotional competency talks about the core construct, which is explains success both at the individual employees and in an organization. So when we talk about emotional competency in a sphere of workplace, remember it's not just going to be identifying your emotion, but also the employee's emotions, understanding the organization's thought process. And Goldman in 1998 stated that emotional competency is a learned ability. You need to learn it. It's not something that we are born with. You need to learn it. And emotional intelligence, it's based on how intelligent that you are, which is how positively influence other So competency is closely related to emotional intelligence, which is emotional intelligence is, the ability to recognize one's own emotion, the other people's, and regulating it. But there is a striking difference between the two. Competencies, which are emotional in nature, and intelligence, emotional intelligence, are not the same. Now, moving ahead, taking the concept more ahead of emotional competencies, we need to know it's better understood always in the relationship of emotional intelligence. We need to know that competencies would be a little one step ahead. Emotional intelligence is something which is an intelligence and ability to understand, reason, and judge well emotionally the circumstances and people. Competency is going to be one notch up. It's going to be a higher metacognition, which is a higher ability. So emotional intelligence is, the ability to monitor one's own self, also discriminate other people's emotion, discriminate between different emotions, label them appropriately, use emotional information to guide in thinking and behavior. This is one of the most famous definition that we have of emotional intelligence, which was given by Salvoy and Mayer. And need to know that the EI is based on three models. So the emotional intelligence, which becomes the core of our competency, has three models. One is the trait model, the ability model, the competency model. Now, we need to understand how come emotional intelligence, if we separate the two, let's understand if we separate competencies and intelligence, how it does function and does not function. Need to know competency is a metacognition, which is the higher ability to analyze, synthesize, further go on. And speaking of emotional intelligence, that's the ability that you have within you to solve problem, to judge things, to probably understand it. So understanding, knowing is coming from intelligence. Monitoring your thinking and behavior is coming from emotional intelligence. But using this intelligence to analyze, to synthesize, to transform you or your performance, or probably to transform other people around you and their understanding to you, is competency. So, in a general parlance, yes, competency is the bigger term, but the core is the emotional intelligence. We will not function without that emotional intelligence in within ourselves when speaking about competencies. Now, as stated, that we have three models that we have, which is the trait model, the ability model, and the competency model. Let's start with the competency model that we had. So, the model of competence was given by Goldman again in 1995, and it focuses on the behavior that actually leads to performance. So, its core is that we look onto the behavior which is leading to you performing, which is leading to your performance. This model conceptualizes emotional intelligence at a large range of disposition. So, its major essence is that it actually focuses on emotional intelligence as a large range of disposition, competencies ranging from emotional traits to learned abilities. So this is not only focusing on something which is your traits, which is a trait which is relatively stable, but also enclosing it within it the things that you have learned. So emotional intelligence is not like the person that you're born and the way that you are, but it's also something which you're learning from the environment. Our circumstances at times makes us better, a better person, a better emotionally intelligent person. More wisdom comes in, more experiences gets us more knowledge. So we need to know that it does conceptualize emotional intelligence as large range of disposition and competency, which is ranging from individual trait to learned traits. Now, moving ahead, Goldman's also has categorized, the five categories, the competency into the five categories, and each category is divided into multiple elements. So these categories are self-awareness, it is motivation, it is self-regulation, social awareness and empathy, which comes hand in hand, which is being socially aware and being empathetic, and social skills. This also was the competency divided into five. So always think, you talk about emotional competency, these five things should be there in your mind. Motivation, self-awareness, social awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Moving ahead, competency. Let's define competency per se for knowledge. And competency is defined as the description of learned outcomes, meaning what can a person know or prove to have to a result of learning process. So yes, to understand that it is a learning outcome, it is something that can be skilled and trained. We can train your competency, we can make better results out of it. Also, this was given by Orst et al. In 2009. And in general term, competency just refers to the quality of performance that you're doing. So anything that you've learned, how well are you performing it? Simple, simple. So competency would be what? What is your performance? That's your competency. Let's take an example, a child doing really well in mathematics, performing regularly well from class 2nd to class 8th. Remember, that's their academic mathematical competency. Why? In simple, layman language, competency is the quality of performance that the individual on a specific task performs and does. This is given by Black and Ornell in 2001, which has been quite recent. Then let's talk about emotional competencies, speaking about what are the different types or kinds of emotional competencies. We have personal competency and social competency. So think by the term. Personal competency would make you think of what? Personal competency will make you think of you as a person. It is based on you as an individual. So it's the recognition. Also, personal competency is an individual's recognition of his or her emotion, his or her ability to appropriately express emotion. So this is about you knowing yourself and being correctly identifying it and then expressing it. So the ability to appropriately express emotions and the ability to maintain emotional control and also to adapt is a form of social competence. So we need to know it is the basis of social competence. So let's just understand it again. Personal competency is of a person. It's about the individual. It's about the individual's way that he or she recognizing what he is feeling. If he, let's take an example, a person is feeling really happy. So his own ability to recognize the joy that he or she is experiencing, and then after the recognition, the ability to express it correctly. You know, at times joy out of lack of control is expressed as ecstasy. So remember, this is not going to be a competence. Competence is recognition, appropriately expressing it. The ability also to maintain emotional control is extremely important. You know, we feel that emotional intelligence and competency is just about knowing yourself. You know yourself well and it's done. No, it's about recognition, appropriately expressing that joy, and also being able to control yourself. Self control is paramount and regulated. How much and how much not. You know, I feel when we are making our children grow in the early times and we are actually sensitizing them with a kind of emotion, we let them all not only recognize emotion but also pinpoint on how much they need to express. This is where emotional control and regulation comes in. And the more that you control, the more that you understand yourself, and the better that you can grasp yourself is also a base of social competence. So your personal competence actually becomes the base for your social competence. Also, the competence that fall in the area of personal competences, which is some elements which are under personal competence, is your self-awareness, your self-regulation, motivation, and social awareness and empathy. So out of the Goldman's category, we have some here, which is self-awareness, self-regulation, we have social skills, and we have motivation and empathy. Now, this is something we will best understand in terms of emotional intelligence, which is the self and the social. The image is beautiful to make us understand that how, you know, the self and the social struggles and probably function hand in hand in everyday lifestyle. So let's look at the image. This is talking about who am I. The who am I is the self-awareness. So self-awareness is actually recognizing what is your emotion, how are you feeling, what are your moods, what drives you good, and how much effort is required for your task. So this is the recognition, which is awareness, which is self. Now move to the other, which is who am I in terms of social, becomes the social awareness. This is also the ability to recognize, but it is about to understand the emotional makeup of other people. It does talk about understanding, but it's not personal. So it's not self, it's other people. This is social awareness. So social awareness is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people, and also, you know, the skills of treating people according to their problems, according to their circumstances and situation. You know, we've seen people who are very street smart, the ones who are able to manage other people really well. They talk to them according to their mood, they address their problems according to their circumstances. Those are socially aware individuals. They change their intonation, they change their way of talking, they change their behavior according to the situation and other people. These are people who know themselves. So the who am I is ticked, but it's understood in a social condition. Now, regulation, it talks about what I do. So the regulation talks about self-management, the ability to control, redirect. So, when we talk about regulation, regulation would be what ourselves. The ability to control, redirect, disrupt impulses and moods. So your ability to control yourself, the ability to just go gaga, completely loosen up yourself, make better decision, the propensity to actually suspend better decisions before acting, which is thinking before you act. Regulation is all about thinking before you act. Regulation is all about understanding what you need to do right now and how much. The how much, what and how is really important when we talk about the regulation. Now, the similar thing, when it's regulated, converts into a bigger form, which are called social skills in today's time. So, if you know how to regulate yourselves amongst people, build up relationship, have a very amicable relationship with other people, build networks, maintain those network, have a common ground with people, build a rapport with most of the people around, have your connections, get your work done. That are social skills. So do we get to know that the way you handle relationship is going to be a social skill, the way you manage yourself is going to be your own thing, which is something associated to self management. So see, emotional competence is just, I feel, just not the upper sheet. It is so piled up in, below. It is so much that you need to understand yourself when you talk about emotional intelligence and competency. So the image is a beautiful thing for making us understand that what is self and what is social in terms of recognition and regulation. Now moving ahead, let's understand emotional awareness in oneself, which is also talking about self-awareness indirectly. In emotion in others begins by developing an emotional awareness in ourselves. So which is rightly said, if you want to be a best judge of others, I think we need to understand ourselves first. The judgment, the understanding needs to begin with ourselves first. So identifying one's own emotion is also essential for effectively managing one's own emotions. So emotional awareness consists of number of skills. So if you want to know yourself, you want to develop yourself emotionally, there are skills that you need to, adapt, or probably skills that you need to learn with time. First is identifying emotion. Learn to identify what are you feeling right now, and that to correctly. So labeling your emotion, being experienced, is extremely important. Like team capabilities, creating a group synergy in pursuing collective goals, that's important. Then describing or expressing emotion being experienced. So first is know what you're feeling, then label what you're feeling, then elaborately explain what you're feeling. So people who know what they're feeling, they can label themselves well, and once you label yourself well, you get to know in what line of in what line of element do I need to explain my labeled emotion. Let's take an example. At times children getting grades, and they get higher grades and lower grades. Some kids get really high grades, so they identify that their emotion, which is being an outburst and the expelling joy at the moment, is because of higher grades. So they identify the emotion is coming why and how. Now, you need to label that my joy is extremely high because of my great result. So you actually labeled it. You labeled it with a cause and effect. Now you need to explain it. How did it happen? Describing this experience is important, which is the amount of effort built in working hard, studying, day and night, burning the midnight oil, and working for it actually made me understand my strength and weaknesses, and this is how my result is. So when you start describing your emotion, that what has led to it, these core three things will actually give you a far more better emotional awareness than anybody. And this is where we falter. We completely, like for example, at times, today when children are asking for items and materialistic things, they just come to describing their emotion. I'll be very happy, you buy me this toy, this is the most best toy, all my friends are having it. They start expressing their emotions elaborately, but what do they don't understand? They don't understand why do they, what is the emotion that they have. Is it happiness by seeing the toy, or is it the happiness that their friends having the toy? So when it's the identification is wrong, the labeling is going to be wrong. Once the labeling is wrong, remember the description is obviously going to be codependent on multiple other things except yourself. So it's not going to be an emotional awareness of you, but an emotional awareness of a group that we talk about, people that we function with ourselves. So our needs and emotions are not dependent on ourselves, ideally. Our needs and emotions are dependent on other people. Then, knowing that emotional awareness has the three things that need to be ticked in, we need to know emotional identification skill is also an essential component in emotional competence. So that is, emotional identification skill needs to be there. The construct is better understood by contrasting it with allisthemia. This is a disorder where there is a deficiency in the ability to identify and describe emotion and, externally orient thinking. So the fact that the best thing that they mention is that the emotional competence and the identification skill can be best understood by understanding its opposite, which is something which is alexithymia. Alexithymia is the inability. We are not able to have the ability to identify and describe one's emotion, not only internally but also externally. So it's not just about you not understanding it, but it's also about you not able to explain the other people. So, and having it would be knowing it all, knowing it yourself, and also being able to explain it to the other person. So, emotional identification skill is a skill. It can be learned, it can be trained in people. Emotional identification skill construct is marked by an awareness of experienced emotion, appropriate identification, labeling, and appropriate expression of the same, which is correct. Now let's move to emotional awareness in others. So, see, emotions are never complete until you do not understand other people. We are social animals. We can never function without judging other people. We cannot. We see other people, we start talking about them. Imagine yourself sitting in a restaurant and you have, number of people sitting in front of you. You will be busy eating your meal, but at the same time, you'll be busy watching what other people are feeling and emoting. If they have a beautiful dish on their table, you will see it on their face, and you start, working onto it. That what they might be feeling, what kind of dish is it, what has made them feel so happy about it. So that is awareness in other people. Akin to personal emotional awareness and awareness of emotion being experienced and expressed by other people around us is extremely crucial. The reason it's extremely crucial is because we are social animals, also because of the fact that we need to know that we cannot function without speaking to other people, being connected to the other people, and also by not developing the social well-being. See, well-being is something which talks about being physiologically, psychologically, socially, emotionally fit. So well-being is a bigger content, component. So when we talk about something which is social well-being, remember social well-being will group other people. It's crucial because it's the ability to become aware of other people's emotion. What are they experiencing? What can they experience? And how did they felt about it? So the ability or unwillingness to pay attention to other people's emotion can actually lead to miscommunication, conflicts. It could lead to frustration. It could lead to fights. It could lead to aggressive spats. So whereas accurately identifying emotions and accurately identifying other people's thought process and behaviors will lead to cooperation, will lead to collaboration, mutual understanding. So emotional awareness in others also has components. So like emotional awareness in us had components like motivation, we had self-awareness, we had social skills and empathy. Here we have some three interdependent skills that we need to have when we are talking about emotional awareness in other people, which is emotion perception, emotion recognition, and emotion interpretation. Now, see the difference. The elements are all outward. None of the element is inward. We are not talking about awareness. We are not talking about regulation. We are not talking about understanding ourselves. We are rather talking about something that you see, which is perception, something that you recognize, which is happening outside, something that you interpret is also something that you see and interpret. All the awareness which is in social context is always outside us. It is always going to be not a part of us but a part of others, which is best understood by you. So that is something which is emotional awareness in other people. Let's understand these terminologies at a, in a proper manner to know what are these key elements when we talk about emotional awareness in others. See, emotional perception is your ability to identify emotion in others. So it's your ability to see through people. I think this is like the best word I use for perception because it's, your ability to see through people, have emotion is experienced, interpreted, depends upon how you perceive it. So if you see a fight happening and you perceive the fight to be very aggressive because of some reason, despite it not being aggressive, remember your perception has gone wrong. Your subjective experience of other people's emotions have got wrong. So, for anything, we need to emotionally become aware about others, entail making, accurate decision. So, perception becomes the pillar point for everything else. The better that you see and know, the better that you understand, the better that you will interpret, and the right conclusions will come out. So, subjective experience by interpreting their physical changes through sensory systems and inferring the implicit meaning of these observed changes. So, perception is all about this, and also visual cues are very important in perceptual, obviously, for emotional perception. So, when you talk about perceiving visual cues are very important, like facial expression of other people, some people using gestures, body postures. There are times we get to know how people are not comfortable around us because their body postures is all closed. Their body posture is all enclosed. They don't want to, their crossed legs, their crossed hands, that actually indicates their body positions. And body postures are one of the most amazing fact about a source which tells you information about the emotional perception. So to develop this awareness about other people, which is if you want to develop an emotional awareness in other people, remember you need to develop this thing of identifying the correct virtual cues, which is identifying the body gestures, identifying the facial expressions of people rightly. So you catch hold of the fact, yes, this person is happy. You can see them smiling chin to chin. You feel that this is something which is coming naturally and organically in them. That is recognizing the expression and gestures. And further, if that is seen in the body posture, that actually gives you a complete information about emotional perception. This completes with emotional perception. And secondary, an important thing about perception is a lot of researchers show that at times aromas and smell also has a very potent effect on emotion, which is very true. Fragrances and good smells are extremely, extremely important when we speak about emotional awareness in others. So that finishes with emotional awareness. We talk about emotional perception. Let's talk about something which is going to be, talking about, something that deals with a lot more other things, which is universality of emotional expression. That when you talk about, there are so many emotions that we have. So let's talk about, is there something which is universality of emotional expression? Yes, there is. What is it? Universality of emotional expression has been noted by scholars like Charles Darwin, the ones who gave us the origin of species. Also authored a book which is Expression of Emotions in Man and Animals, published in 1872. Also, that spoke about that the facial expressions are universal. They're not learned. We all have it the same. So I completely echo with this thought process. Look at the image. These are the 7 emotional, universal emotions that you have, which is happiness, sadness, contempt, surprise, fear, disgust, and anger. See, joy is seen smilingly on everyone's face. Tell me people are happy and they're crying. They're not. The facial expression is universal in nature. Every one of us has only one facial expression for happiness, which is smiling chin to chin, or, all smiling, giggling, expressing it in our body's gestures with, hands open, talking to people. And similarly, sadness also has the similar kind. Contempt is one, surprise is one, fear is one, disgust is one, and anger is one. These are one of the most, 7 most common universal emotions according to Charles Darwin, which is quoted to be same amongst people. Most recently, Paul Ekman and his colleagues have experimentally established the universal existence of 7 emotions, which we've just studied. And Ekman researched that there are 6 core emotions which are called as universal emotions. So let's talk about the 6 of them, that with the 6 and 7 of them that we have. There are 7. 6 are core, which are called as, the universal, and 1 is an extra one, which might not be present in everybody. So let's relate the text with the image that we have. So see, joy is obviously sometimes refers to as happiness, and symbolized by raising of the mouth of corners and tightening of the eyelids. We all see that raising of our mouth, the eyelids get tightened and also widespread. Surprise is symbolized by what? Arcing your eyebrows, opening wide your mouth wide open at times, and your expression, your jaws, everything is open. So that's like jaw dropping also at times happen. Then we talk about sadness. Sadness talks about lowering of mouth corners. So it's opposite of happiness. Happiness goes up. This is something which is corners control. Eyelids drooping. Anger is obviously symbolized with something. Your eyebrows drooping down. Your lips are firmly tight, and our entire expression is very tight. Disgust, on the other hand, is symbolized by the upper lip raising, nose bridge wrinkling, and cheek raising. And fear is symbolized by raising your eyes. Eyes are very sharp, sharply stretching towards the lip. It's all going down towards the lip. And the last one is contempt, where the half of your lip is tightened and the other is risorus muscle, and the head is a little tilted. So contempt is seen very different, where one eyebrow just goes up, where, it seems like you're very analytical about other people. So these are 7 basic emotions, out of which 6 were labeled as core by Paul Ekman. So these are universal emotions that we talk about. So when we talk about universal, the term universal is suggesting us what? That it's common. It's common to all of us across cultures. That's what even Charles Darwin quoted us. This finishes with unit 3 of the block 2. Let's move to unit 4 of block 3 now. We are going to talk about the models of emotional intelligence today. We have umpteen amount of models of emotional intelligence. This will tell us that emotional intelligence and assessment is the core of understanding people, not only personally, but also understanding other people around us. So let's go through the models that we are going to do. We are going to do the ability model. We are going to learn how to assess the ability model. We have the trait emotional intelligence model, then the assessment of the trait emotional intelligence. Then we talk about Geno's model of emotional intelligence. There's going to be the assessment. Every model has its assessment. It's important. Then there's going to be a mixed model, and there's going to be a Barrow model, assessment of the Barrow model, the performance model, and the assessment of the performance EI model. This begins with all the understanding of theoretical potential of emotional intelligence and even assessment of the same. So let's talk about the ability model. We start with the ability model to begin with. Ability model has 4 branches, 4-branch framework of emotional intelligence, which was put forth by Savoy and Mayer, the same psychologist who gave us the most renowned definition of emotional intelligence. Also, Savoy and Mayer was the first person who coined emotional intelligence for us in 1990. And emotional intelligence has not been one of those topics in our times that has just come in and has got sublime. No, it's a topic which is far more glorified today in today's time. People are researching, still working on it. There are so many relationship between emotional intelligence and creativity, and etc etc. So the research still goes on, starting from 1990, as the term emotional intelligence was coined by Savoy and Mayer. Getting back to the 4-branch model of ability trait and the ability model of emotional intelligence. The term ability is what? Ability is something which is an underlying potential, something that we already have that can be trained. So the researchers actually theorized that there are 2 kinds of broader under the same ability model. There were researchers who actually defined intelligence in 2 major forms. One was hot and cool. So see how beautifully psychologists put this up. So cool intelligence pertain to knowledge that is not personal but rather intellectual, such as verbal, proposition, math ability, the visual spatial ability of the intelligence. So the cooler aspect of intelligence is what? Not something which is personal, but the intellectual, which is the verbal, the visual spatial. So something that you speak, something that you visually visualize and space out, mathematical abilities and propositional abilities. Hotter intelligences are personal. So the other one was pertaining to knowledge, which is not personal, but the hotter intelligence is something which is personal. It is to do with processing information, personal information pertaining to your social acceptance, your identity coherence, and your emotional well-being. So remember, the hot intelligence is more closer to us than the cooler intelligence. The cooler intelligence talks about how do you speak, how do you verbalize things, how visually you space out items around you. These are the 4 branches that we talk about as spoken of, the 4 branches of emotional intelligence. First is perceiving of emotion, reasoning of emotion, understanding of emotion, and managing of emotion. See, emotional intelligence can never go without these 4 branches until the first step is perception. until you do not perceive the right kind of emotion accurately, understand the non-verbal cues, how do you reason them? So perception is the first pillar to start with. So if you perceive with it, remember you'll reason it well also. So using emotion to promote thinking, cognitive activity, help prioritize, paying attention to the right things to understand. Once you understand things, you'll be able to respond to them correctly, catch hold of the right intonations of emotions, like the right feelings of emotions. Once you reason it, you'll able to understand it better. So you know why the emotion is coming, what you need to pay attention for what it is coming. Then we talk about understanding emotion, which is how we perceive other people's emotion. Can we have the wide variety of emotions, such as boss is acting angry, would it, why he or she is acting angry, is the work pending, are people not there, is there large amount of abstinence in work? So once you reason the emotion, you understand what is behind the reason. Once you understand what is behind the reason, you'll be having the ability to control the emotion. So the ability to manage emotions effectively is a key part of emotional intelligence. I feel emotional intelligence is never understood, best understood until you control emotions. So people, I feel, by the end of adapting to emotional intelligence, the first thing they should learn is something which is management of emotions. So regulating emotion appropriately, throwing, putting it out, responding to it well, is an important aspect of emotional management. So these are the four framework of the ability model, which is perceiving, reasoning, understanding, and managing or controlling emotions. Let's understand the assessment tool of the ability model of EI. How do you assess? Was there any assessments given? Yes, unlike the self-report measures, I'll let you know what is self-report measure. Self-report measures are one of the most common testing in psychology, where you report your own self. Like the ones that you do it online, they ask you, are you, like for example, if you picked up a personality test, they will ask you, how do you manage your work? Is it thought before action, action before thought, yes or no? So this is you reporting your own life on the paper or on any mode. So those are self-report measure, which rely on individuals' own perception of their skills. Thus, yes, it is prone to biases. How it is prone to biases? See, self-report measure will tell you what you want to tell. So, for example, if the questions are consistently asking in a test that, are you anxious before starting a new thing? Do you feel palpitation? Are there physical changes? And you keep mentioning no, no, and no, high biases. The results are going to be wrong because you are reporting yourself wrong. So, in the assessment, it is measured. The mental abilities would be assessed by performing a task. So, they mentioned the ability model had a tool. You do a task and we will assess the performance. So that's how we get to know the ability of the person. We will not make you do self-report measure. We will rather give you a set of mental abilities as a task and you have to perform them. So Salvoy May Caruso intelligence test, emotional intelligence test was developed, and this test was embodied in a way. This was embodying the ability model. That was, it was explaining the ability model. It initially had normed to be sampled around 5,000 men and women. So it had a sample pilot study of being done on 5,000 men and women, and is designed for persons aged 15 years and above. So MICT has around 141 items like self-report measure, but also 8 tasks that you have to perform. So don't you see it's a combination of both? You report yourself also and you do some task also. So it nullifies the drawbacks of self-report measure. So this is the assessment of the trait model. Also, there were subscales of MSCEIET, which is emotional perception, emotional facilitation, understanding of emotions, and managing emotions. So it also has an understanding that there was, what is the test based on? This is what they're saying. Every subscale was based on emotional perception. Perception is visual cues. So understanding the facial features, the pictures were shown and asked that what do you see as emotion. Emotional facilitation was facilitation and synthesizing test, which is the ability to generate and use the feelings as emotion, necessary to communicate the feelings. So use what you have to communicate what are they feeling. Understanding emotion is change and blend test, which is measured the ability to understand emotional information. Are you able to understand what emotional information is coming from that clip or that transaction of conversation? So it is about giving meaning, reasoning out what's happening. And the last is management of emotion, which is management and relationship test, where you modulate, promote, personal understanding and growth. So the tool approximately takes 35 to 45 minutes. It is a time-bound thing. 45 minutes are taken. Then let's come to the trait model of emotional intelligence. And also trait model equally has its assessment. So the trait model of intelligence, emotional intelligence, we should understand the term trait. Trait are personality disposition, characteristics that makes you stand apart from other people. So some people can have a trait of being gregarious. Some people can have a trait of being shy. Some people can have a trait of being communicative. Some people can have a trait of being articulative, helpful. That can also be a trait. So remember, trait model of emotional intelligence takes a view that may be considered opposite to the one which was in the ability model. So we can say what ability model told us, this just came as not a retaliation, but came a little opposite to that. So the emotional intelligence according to trait model is not a real intelligence, therefore cannot be measured as an ability, and because emotions are subjective in nature. So Petries in 2004 stated, how can you actually test emotions? Emotions are not an ability. They keep fluctuating. You have a feeling, then you have a mood, then you have an emotion, and your feelings keeps changing according to the trait model. Also, trait emotional intelligence under this model is thought to be situated within the personality framework, which is defined as a constellation of emotional self-perception located at lower levels of personality hierarchies. This was also given by Petries and Peta et al. In 2007. Petrid actually stated that emotions cannot be tested because it's not an ability. It is not something that is an underlying potential according to Petrid. So you cannot test it. Which is, what do you think about yourself? What do you think about your emotions? Also, Petries have defined trait emotional self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is what? The ability to control your performance. So trait emotional self-efficacy means emotions are subjective. Emotional intelligence is quite simply an individual's own perception of your ability. That means, according to Petries, emotional intelligence is how you see yourself as intelligent, not your ability to think well, understand other people's regular. No, it's about how you emotionally feel, see yourself, work with emotion. So, are you stronger? Are you a happier person, a sad person? According to Petries, that's what's the definition. Also, thus the trait model actually focuses on personality traits only, primarily. For trait model, traits are important. That is, personality is important, helpful in perceiving and regulating emotion. It emphasizes that the emotional self-perception model of emotional intelligence and the assessment of trait model in personality plays a significant role in emotional intelligence. So, according to this trait model, they mention that understanding people's trait, which is the personality disposition, will give you a farther better journey to understand somebody's emotional intelligence. So, if you want to understand people's emotional intelligence, they mention understand their personality. So, see, look at the diagram. This is the image that we have on the top. It's such a beautiful understanding that a part of individual personality is made up by emotional perception of self and emotional traits. So your traits which are emotional in nature and how do you perceive these emotional traits. So that combines your personality. So ideally everything is rooted down to personality. So trait, like the trait term, actually focused on the traits more, and they said if you want to understand, please understand your personalities first. And now moving ahead to the assessment tool of trait model. Trait model was using self-reporting measures only. It had inventories and questionnaires, and it had a trait emotional questionnaire which was known as Tyche, which was again developed by Petries and his associate. There is the latest version, the full version of instrument actually comprised of 153 items. There are 15 facets, 4 factors, and a global trait EI, which is you get to know that what is your personality emotional intelligence. So the 15 personality traits include adaptability, empathy, assertiveness, impulsiveness, optimism being positive, self-motivation, emotional perception, emotional regulation, self-esteem, which is expression of emotions, happiness, social awareness, stress management, management of others, and relationships. So the questionnaire is being lately translated into 15 languages that we have. So it talks about 15 languages that we can actually look forward to. So it simply has done a self-report measure converting into 15 languages. After this came a GNOS model of intelligence, which was given by Ben Palmer and Kuster in Swinburne University as a specific need was felt to design a model that actually meets the unique and specific needs of business leaders, human resource professionals, and occupational psychologists. So the GNOS model was an outproduct after knowing that emotional intelligence is very needed, very much needed in an organization to understand the employees, to understand the human resource professional and occupational psychologists. So by that urge that, to understand this, there was a GNOS model which was developed at workplace. This model is a completely organizational based model, GNOS model of emotional intelligence. So this model is recognized, the model is recognized to reflect the emotional intelligence competency that is giving rise to more productive or unproductive say. So this will tell you what are those emotional intelligence competency that can make you productive or less productive. So emotional self-awareness, like we come back to this term time and again, being aware of how you feel and how your feelings impact your performance. So here everything will come down to your performance because it's workplace. Emotional awareness of others, which is perceiving, understanding other people, knowing that acknowledging, the way others feel to demonstrate empathy. Authenticity is extremely important, being very honest, being very genuine, effectively expressing of oneself, being very transparent and keeping commitments. And emotional reasoning, which is explaining your decision making, your feelings behind decision making, integrating the technical as well as the communicative message. I feel, GNOS model rightly says at times when we look at our organizational heads giving us orders, it's only communication. It's only the technical information that comes out with facts. So we need to integrate the feeling behind decision making, understanding what is the technical information and communicate it in a way that it's actually perceived by others transparently. So we need to add on to this, which is emotional reasoning. And the last is self-management, which is managing one's own mood, emotions, and time behavior even in high pressure and in demanding context. Positive influence, which is creating a very positive, healthy environment at workplace, which not only impacts your feeling, also impact other people's feeling, and when they impact the other people's feeling, it will impact the productivity, the feedback, the support coming from others. So this was the GNOS model, which state how emotional awareness, emotional self-awareness, authenticity, emotional reasoning, self-management, positive influence, all of this, how all of this can actually impact the productivity and make you productive or unproductive in the times. Then, speaking of it, beautiful, this thing that we have on the top, which is an image that we can see. See, connect. If you are self-aware, remember you'll be present productively at your place, and if it's not, you'll be disconnected. If you're aware of other people, remember you're going to be more empathetic of other people, and if you're not aware of other people's feeling and emotion, you're going to be very insensitive at workplace because you will not be you will not pay attention and pay heed to other people's emotion. If you're authentic, which is transparent and genuine, you're going to be far more genuine and giving, letting out all information. If you're not authentic, you are going to be very untrustworthy by other people. Your work employees will not trust you. If your emotional reasonings is very good, you tell out what you want and why do you want, you're going to be expansive. If you're not, it's going to be a one array information. People will see you as very limited. Self-management is good of yourself. Remember, you will be more bouncing back, more resilient. If self-management is not good, you're going to be temperamental. We see temperamental issues at workplace by a lot of people. That could be seen. If your influence is very positive and charismatic, remember you're going to be empowering to your work employees. But if it's not, you're going to be indifferent. There are going to be biases. You will not be able to judge people and workplaces well. Now, moving ahead, the assessment of GNOS model, we need to know. Talking about assessment, GNOS also made an inventory. It was also, inventories are self-report measures only, where you need to report yourself. So it was GNOS EI, a primary tool to assess the emotional intelligence within the GNOS framework. And it was again published in Swinburne University of Emotional Intelligence Test. That's how it was labeled. It was published as the Swinburne. It was called as Suite. Later it was revised. 2001 it came the first version. Later it was revised. Remember, this GNOS model assessment test, which is the Suite, is ideally to be used in workplaces. We cannot be using it anywhere else. You cannot use it in general people to identify learning and developmental areas, and no, we cannot. We can only use it with employees. We can only use it for learning and developmental areas of the employees. We can use it for employee selection. We can also use it for appraisals of employees, identifying the potential excellence in our workplace, identifying who is growing vertically and who can manage more things of the same paradigm horizontally. So this tool is a behavior-based assessment, has 70 items, and the source ratings on emotional intelligence workplace behavior from reporters have the opportunity that you observe a person frequently. So it brings about observation along with the 70 item question inventory, and thus the more than one rater can also provide assessment. As a rating scale is also given of scale, rating scales are usually given by people who know you. So it's going to be something which can be done by more people. So probably as an employee one, you can be rated by your co-employees, your work bosses, your heads, your colleagues. That finishes with the assessment of Geno's model, and we did with trait, ability in Geno's today, which was essentially workplace, completing the models of competency. We will continue with more models of competency to understand that how emotional intelligence was tested, how it was seen at the workplace, and how it was understood by world across. Knowing emotional intelligence is not only paramount for children today, it's also paramount for families, for work organization, for people to do better. Performances get better if you're emotionally far more equipped. Intelligence, IQ is paramount, but I feel emotional intelligence is also that one little stand that we would need to perform better, to express better, and to regulate ourselves. Thank you.
Good morning to all. I am Dr. Krishna, Academic Counselor in Sociology. ఈరోజు మనము BSOE 144 రీడింగ్ ఆఫ్ ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫిక్స్ అనే బుక్ నుంచి యూనిట్ నెంబర్ 4 ఇండియన్ ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ అనే లెసన్ గురించి చెప్పుకుందాం అనమాట. ఇక్కడ మనము ముందుగా ఈ ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ అనే గ్రీకు పదాలు ఎథ్నోస్ నుంచి వచ్చిందని తెలుసుకున్నాం. దీని అర్థము ప్రజలు మరియు గ్రాఫిన్ అనే పదము నుంచి రాయటం జరిగింది. వోల్కార్ట్ కోసము ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీని గుర్తించదగిన వ్యక్తుల సమూహం యొక్క ఆచారాలు, సామాజిక ప్రవర్తన వివరణగా నిర్వచించారు. ఈ యొక్క ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ అంటే ఏమీ లేదు, వ్యక్తుల యొక్క సమూహం యొక్క ఆచారాలు, సామాజిక ప్రవర్తన ఏ విధంగా ఉంటుంది అనేది ఈ లెసన్ ద్వారా మనం తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉంటాం అన్నమాట. ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ వివిధ సంస్కృతుల యొక్క మొదటి చేవ్రాత పద్ధతిని ఉపయోగిస్తూ ఉంటుంది. ఆ తర్వాత మరొక మాటలో చెప్పాలంటే చెల్లా చెదురుగా ఉన్న అన్ని డేటా ముక్కలను ఒక సాధారణ థ్రెడ్లోకి లాగి మొత్తం అందించే ఖాతాలు దీని గురించి అర్థం చేసుకోవచ్చు. ఇది తప్పనిసరిగా ఒక నిర్ణీతమైన సమాజము మరియు దానిలో ఉన్న సాంస్కృతిక వ్యవస్థ యొక్క దృక్కోణము నుంచి మానవ ఉనికికి సంబంధించిన ప్రశ్నలను చూసే తులనాత్మక అధ్యయనముగా మనం భావించవలసి వస్తుంది. స్వీయ మరియు ఇతర సందర్భాలలో ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ గురించి మాట్లాడేటప్పుడు నిరంతరము పునరావృతమయ్యే 3 క్లిష్టమైన ప్రశ్నలు ఉన్నాయన్నమాట. అవి మనకు తెలిసినవి మనకు ఎలా తెలుసు అనేది ఒకటి, వేరొకరి కోసం ఎలా మాట్లాడాలి, మరియు చివరికి ఎవరిని ఉద్దేశించి మాట్లాడాలి. ఈ సమాచారాన్ని ప్రదర్శించే విధానం అనేక రూపాల్లో మనం తీసుకోవచ్చు. వ్యాసాలు, పత్రికలు, గణాంక డేటా, డాక్యుమెంటరీలు, పుస్తకాల వంటి కొన్ని మనము ఉదాహరణగా పేర్కొనవచ్చు. ఆధునిక మానవ శాస్త్ర రంగంలో ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ రంగంలో 2 పదాలు సెమినల్గా పరిగణించబడుతూ ఉంటాయి. ఇది బ్రిటిష్ ఆంథ్రోపాలజిస్ట్ యొక్క రచనల యొక్క పద్ధతి ప్రభావం మన మీద కూడా ఎంతో ఉన్నది అనేది మనం చెప్పుకోక తప్పదన్నమాట. తర్వాత ఈ విధంగా భారత రాజ్యం నియంత్రణకు స్వతంత్రం కోసము ఉద్యమము, ఇది జరిగిన మార్గాలలో ఒకటిగా మనము తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉన్నాము. స్వాతంత్రానికి ముందు భారతదేశం యొక్క మానవ శాస్త్ర పని ప్రధానంగా వివరణాత్మకమైనది మరియు 1920 నుంచి 30లో అన్వేషించాల్సిన అన్య దేశ సంస్కృతిగా చూపబడినది. భారతదేశము స్వతంత్రానికి కొన్ని దశాబ్దాల ముందు పరిపాలనా బంధాల నుంచి విముక్తి యొక్క ఒక చిత్రాన్ని రూపొందించడము ఆలోచన మళ్ళీ కనుగొనబడింది. మరియు భారతదేశంలో అధ్యయనాలు అనేక విధంగా జరిగాయి. ఇప్పుడు భారతదేశం యొక్క అవగాహన భిన్న దృక్కోణాలు నుంచి చూడబడుతూ ఉన్నది. 1947 తర్వాత ఆధునిక మానవ శాస్త్రం యొక్క క్రమశిక్షణ ఒక ప్రత్యేక అంశముగా అభివృద్ధి చెందిందనేది చెప్పుకోవాల్సిన విషయం. దీనిలో దేశంలోనే కాకుండా ప్రపంచ స్థాయిలో కూడా ఇది దానికి ఉపన్యాసము, పద్ధతి, సంభావిత అవగాహన మరియు మొదలైన వాటికి సంబంధించిన అనేక మార్పులకు గురైందనేది మనం తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉన్నామన్నమాట. ఆ తర్వాత ఇవి మాత్రమే కాక ఈ క్షేత్రము భారతదేశంలో ఇతర రాష్ట్రాలు మరియు కేంద్ర పాలిత ప్రాంతాలను విస్తరించి మరియు కేవలము అన్వేషించిన మారుమూల ప్రాంతాలు మాత్రమే పరిమితం చేయలేదన్నమాట. అన్ని ప్రాంతాలని ఇది కవర్ చేసిందనేది మనము తెలుసుకోగలుగుతున్నాము. పట్టణ ప్రాంతాలు కూడా అలానే మతము, ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ, రాజకీయాలు, సామాజిక వ్యవస్థపై అవగాహనతో పాటు సంస్కృతిలోని ఇతర భాగాల గురించి అవగాహన వంటి అంశాలను కూడా పరిశీలించడము ప్రారంభించిందనేది చెప్పుకోవాలి. ఈ ప్రక్రియ చాలా వివరణాత్మకమైన బహుళ జాతి శాస్త్రాలు ఆవిర్భావానికి దారితీసింది మరియు చాలా నిర్దిష్ట ప్రాంతాలలో ఉన్నాయనేది కూడా తెలియపరిచింది అనమాట. స్వాతంత్రం తర్వాత భారతీయ మానవ శాస్త్రములో అంతర్జాతీయ చర్చల ద్వారా ప్రభావితమవుతుందని పేర్కొన్నాము. మరియు సామాజిక మరియు ప్రతీకాత్మక విలువలపై ఆలోచనలు మరియు విలువలపై మరియు ప్రతిఘటనల ఆలోచనలపై మనము అలాగే వలసవాదము తర్వాత భావాలపై చర్చలు అనేక విధాలు జరిపామన్నమాట. కులము, అంటరానితనము, జాతీయవాదము వంటి వివిధ భారతీయ భావనలు కూడా మరింత విస్తృతంగా అభివృద్ధి చెందాయి. ఆంథ్రోపాలజీ అభివృద్ధి అనేది ఇండాలజీ, పురావస్తు శాస్త్రము మరియు చరిత్ర మరియు సాంస్కృతిక కొనసాగింపుపై సుదీర్ఘమైన చర్చ, అలానే దశాబ్దాలుగా వివరిస్తున్న మార్పు భావనల ఫలితముగా ఏర్పడింది అనేది మనము గ్రహించవలసిన విషయం. స్వాతంత్రానికి ముందు జాతి శాస్త్రాలు ప్రధానంగా గిరిజన సమాజాల అవగాహన చుట్టూ కేంద్రీకృతము అయిందనేది చెప్పుకోవాలి. 1947 తర్వాత కులము మరియు మతము అనే భావనలు ప్రాధాన్యత సంతరించుకున్నాయి. స్వాతంత్రం తర్వాత సంవత్సరాలలో మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు దేశంలోని వివిధ అన్ని ప్రాంతాలను పరిసర కారకాలపై సమాన పరిగణించబడే వాటిపై దృష్టి కేంద్రీకరించారు. పూర్తిగా భిన్నమైనది ఈ ప్రక్రియ మరియు అధ్యయనానికి తగిన మార్పుకు కూడా ఇది గురి అయిందనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. ఈ యొక్క ఇథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్స్ అనేవి మానవ సమాజ శాస్త్రంలో ఒక ప్రముఖ పాత్ర వహిస్తున్నాయి అనేది అనేక రూపాలలో మనము ఈ లెసన్లో తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉన్నాము. తర్వాత మానవ శాస్త్రము ఆధునిక వృత్తిగా 1900 సంవత్సరాల తొలినాళ్లలో ఆవిర్భవించింది. ప్రజల సామాజిక సాంస్కృతిక జీవితంపై విస్తృతమైన క్షేత్రస్థాయి నుంచి క్రమ పద్ధతిలో సమాచారాన్ని సేకరించడం జరిగింది. తర్వాత సామాజిక ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ వృత్తిపరమైన వ్యక్తులకు, ప్రధానంగా న్యాయవాదులకు వలస పాలన నేపథ్యంలో ఒక మేధోపరమైన అభిరుచిగా ప్రారంభమైందనేది ఈ ప్రక్రియ పద్ధతిలో మనము గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాల్సిన విషయం. తొలినాటి మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు పరిణామ క్రమము అనే ఆలోచన కోవకు చెందినవారు. వివిధ వలస ప్రదేశాలలో ఉండేవారిని అవహేతుకంగా అతి ప్రాచీన కాలం వారు అని ముద్ర వేయబడిన వారి సంస్కృతిని, సముదాయాన్ని అధ్యయనం చేయటం వల్ల మాత్రమే అర్థం చేసుకోగలమనే భావన వీళ్ళలో కలిగిందనమాట. పాశ్చాత్య సమాజము అభివృద్ధి చెందిన ఒక సమాజానికి ఉదాహరణ కాగా ఇతర సమాజాల వెనుకబడి ఉన్నాయి. పరిణామక్రమవాది వివిధ సామాజిక సంస్థలైన కుటుంబము, వివాహము, ఆచారాలు, మతము, రాజకీయ వ్యవస్థల ఆవిర్భావము, ప్రగతిని ఊహిస్తూ ఉన్నారు. ఈ యొక్క మానవ సమాజ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు ప్రజల గురించి మాధ్యమిక సమాచారాన్ని ఎక్కువగా గ్రంథాలయాలు లేదా యాత్రికులు, మిషనరీల వర్ణనలపై ఆధారపడటం వల్ల వారు అధ్యయనం చేసిన ప్రజల పట్ల వాస్తవాలు, రచనలు అండ్ విశ్వనీయమైన పరిమితులు ఏర్పడ్డాయి. విశ్వవిద్యాలయాలలో మొదటిగా శిక్షణ పొందిన మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు వివిధ సముదాయంలోకి వెళ్ళి తమ స్వీయ క్షేత్ర కృషి, ఫీల్డ్ వర్క్ అన్నమాట. క్షేత్ర కృషి అంటే సమాజము, సంస్కృతుల అధ్యయనము ప్రారంభించడం వల్ల వృత్తిరీత్యా మానవ శాస్త్రము ఎంతో అభివృద్ధి చెందిందనేది మనం చెప్పుకోక తప్పదు. ఇక్కడ క్షేత్ర కృషిలో కొత్త నైపుణ్యాలు మానవ సమాజాన్ని కొత్తగా అర్థం చేసుకోవటానికి నాంది పలికినవి. వీరు సేకరించిన ప్రాథమిక సమాచారము మాధ్యమిక సమాచారంపై ఆధారపడి వారి కంటే చాలా నమ్మకం ఏర్పడింది. విభిన్నమైన ప్రజలు దేశ సాంస్కృతిక అలవాట్లను పోల్చి చూపే అధ్యయనాలు రావటము ఎక్కువగా జరిగింది. కాలక్రమేణా బ్రిటిష్, ఫ్రెంచ్, జర్మన్, అమెరికా అనే 4 మానవ శాస్త్ర సంప్రదాయాలు అన్ని దేశాలలో ఉద్భవించాయి. అట్లా కొత్తగా ఏర్పడ్డాయనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవాలి. ప్రతి సాంప్రదాయము తనదైన వాదనల్లో సైద్ధాంతిక ధోరణులు కలిగి ఉన్నది. ఒక్కొక్కటి వేటికి అవి ప్రత్యేకమైన సైద్ధాంతిక ధోరణిని కలిగి ఉన్నవన్నమాట. ఈ సాంప్రదాయాల మధ్య చర్చల వల్ల మాత్రము మానవ శాస్త్ర అధ్యయనానికి విషయాలపై పద్ధతులపై విస్తృతమైన ఒప్పందాలు అన్ని దేశాలలో ఈ మానవ ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ పద్ధతుల్లో ఏర్పడింది, కలిగి ఉన్నది అనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవాలి. ఈ యొక్క ఇతర లేదా వేరే సంస్కృతికి చెందిన వారి గురించి తెలుసుకోవాలనే ఆసక్తి ఆ విధంగా ఉండిపోయింది. ప్రజలు, సంస్కృతులు అనే తమ అధ్యయన విషయాలపై ఎలా మాట్లాడాలనేది ఈ యొక్క మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలకి సవాలుగా ఏర్పడింది. ఇతర మరొక సంస్కృతుల్ని ఎలా తెలుసుకోవచ్చు అనేది ఇంకా ఈ మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలకు నేటికి కుదురుగా ఉండనివ్వని అంశంగా మనం ఇప్పటికి కూడా పేర్కొనవచ్చు అన్నమాట. మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు ప్రజలు, సంస్కృతులపై చేసే రచనలు, వర్ణనలు పక్షపాతముతో ఉన్నచో ప్రజలు వీటిని అర్థం చేసుకోవటంలో దీర్ఘకాలిక అపోహలు ఏర్పడుతూ ఉంటాయి. ఉండాలనేది ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్స్ లో తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉన్నాం అన్నమాట. ఇక్కడ సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రములో గల విషయాలు లేదా కార్యక్షేత్రాన్ని పరిధి అంటూ ఉంటారు. ముందటి భాగంలో ప్రస్తావించిన వివిధ సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్ర సమాజము, సంస్కృతి అధ్యయనము పట్ల ఆసక్తిని మనకి ఏర్పరుస్తుంది. మానవుడు ఎక్కడెక్కడ ఉన్నా వారు ఏమి చేస్తారు అనే దానిపైనే మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు ఆసక్తి, మానవ శాస్త్రము ప్రధాన లక్ష్యము మానవులపై సమగ్ర అధ్యయనం చేయాలని వారి సాంస్కృతిక విషయాలను నిష్కృతంగా అధ్యయనం చేయాలనే దృక్పథాన్ని ఏర్పరచుకున్నారు. చాలా విస్తృతమైనది ఈ యొక్క ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీ మెథడ్. మానవుల్లోని వివిధ కోణాలని అధ్యయనం చేసే ప్రయత్నాలు కూడా ఈ యొక్క మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు చేశారు. ఈ యొక్క పద్ధతుల్లో మానవుడి స్థితిని పూర్తిగా గతము, వర్తమానము, భవిష్యత్తు, జీవశాస్త్రము, సమాజము, భాష, సంస్కృతిని అధ్యయనం చేస్తూ ఉంటారు వీరు నిరంతరము. తర్వాత మానవుణ్ణి అర్థం చేసుకునేందుకు ఇది ఒక బహుళ ముఖ విధానంగా మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు అన్నమాట. పండితులు వక్కాణించినట్లుగా సంపూర్ణవాదం, హోలిజం అంటాం తెలుగులో. ఇక్కడ మానవ శాస్త్రానికి ముఖ్య లక్షణాలుగా ఉన్న అది ఒక ఆదర్శము, వాస్తవంగా పూర్తిగా సమగ్రముగా ఉండటము ఇందులో సాధ్యం కాదనమాట. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రములోని ఇతర పెక్కు విభాగాల కంటే మానవ శాస్త్రము విభాగపరంగా, వృత్తిపరంగా విస్తృతమైనది. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రంలో గల అభివృద్ధి, రాజకీయ పరిస్థితులు ఇవన్నీ కూడా మనం పరిగణలోకి తీసుకున్నట్లయితే ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్ అనేది మనకి అన్ని విధాలా తెలుస్తూ ఉంటుంది అనమాట. ఈ యొక్క గిరిజన సమాజాల యొక్క సాంస్కృతిక పద్ధతులను మనం బేస్ చేసుకున్నట్లయితే ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫిక్ మెథడ్స్ అనేవి మనకు విస్తృతంగా అర్థమవుతూ ఉంటాయి అనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. అందుకని మానవ సమాజ శాస్త్రవేత్తలందరూ కూడా ఈ యొక్క గిరిజన సమాజాల యొక్క ప్రభావవంతమైన ఆచారాలు, వ్యవహారాలు, నమ్మకాల మీద ఆధారపడి ఎంతో ముందుకు వెళ్ళి అనేక రకాల అధ్యయనాలు చేసి ఎంతో నూతన విషయాలను వారి యొక్క సాంస్కృతిక ఆచారాలు, నమ్మకాలు, విలువలు, ప్రమాణబద్ధమైన వారి యొక్క జీవిత విధానాన్ని తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉన్నారనేది మనం చెప్పక తప్పదన్నమాట. ఈ విధమైన పద్ధతులలో మనము ఇక్కడ వాస్తవముగా పూర్తిగా సమగ్రముగా ఉండటము అనేక విధాల సాధ్యం కాదు. ఎందుకంటే ఒక్కొక్క సమాజానికి, ఒక్కొక్క సామూహిక ప్రజల యొక్క జీవిత విధానము డిఫరెంట్గా ఉంటుందనేది మనం చెప్పుకుంటూ ఉన్నాము. మానవ శాస్త్రానికి ముఖ్య లక్షణాలుగా ఉన్నది ఇది ఒక ఆదర్శవంతమైనదిగా చెప్తూ ఉంటాము. వాస్తవముగా పూర్తిగా సమగ్రముగా ఉండటం ఇందులో సాధ్యము కాని ప్రక్రియగా చెప్తూ ఉన్నాము. ఈ యొక్క మానవ శాస్త్రము వ్యాపార, తాత్విక, ఇంకా ఎన్నో మానవ శాస్త్ర ఉపశాఖలు ఈ విషయాలను రుజువు చేశాయి. మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు వృత్తిపరమైన వారు తమ అధ్యయనాల ద్వారా మానవ శాస్త్రాన్ని ఒక సమగ్ర విభాగముగా రూపొందించడానికి అన్ని రకాల ప్రయత్నాలు, అన్ని రకాల దోహదపూరితమైన ప్రక్రియ పద్ధతుల్ని వీళ్ళు స్వీకరించారనేది చెప్పుకోవాలి. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రము నిరక్షరాస్యత సమాజాలు, సొంత లిపి లేనివన్నమాట. ఈ నిరక్షరాస్యత సమాజాలంటే దేశీయ సముదాయాల అధ్యయనాల ద్వారా ప్రారంభమైనదిగా మనం గ్రహించవలసిన విషయం. అలాంటి అధ్యయనాలు కొనసాగుతూనే ఉంటాయి, నిరంతరము కొనసాగుతూ ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. మానవ శాస్త్రవేత్తలు కేవలము గిరిజన సముదాయాల అధ్యయనము దగ్గరే నిలిచిపోయారన్నమాట. అనేక రకాల విషయాలు తెలుసుకోవడానికి, అనేక రకాల విషయాలు పరిశోధన చేయడానికి నిరంతరము ప్రాకులాడుతూనే ఉంటారు. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రము సంక్లిష్ట సమాజాలు, పట్టణ ప్రదేశాలు, వాస్తవికమైన యథార్థాలు, వర్చువల్ రియాలిటీ అంటూ ఉంటాము. సామాజిక మార్పు, యంత్రాలతో మానవుల పరస్పర చర్యల అధ్యయనాల వైపు ఇప్పుడున్న పరిస్థితిలో ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్స్ ని విస్తరిస్తూ ఉన్నాయనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. ఇందు ప్రధానముగా సామాజిక సాంస్కృతిక మానవ శాస్త్రాన్ని ఎందుకు అధ్యయనం చేయాలనేది ఇప్పుడు మనం తెలుసుకుందాం. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రాన్ని అభ్యసించడానికి అనేక రకాల కారణాలు ఉన్నాయి. సంస్కృతుల అధ్యయనం చేయటం యందు ఆసక్తి కలవారు మానవ శాస్త్రాన్ని నేర్చుకొనవచ్చు. తప్పనిసరిగా ఈ సంస్కృతుల మీద అధ్యయనం చేయాలంటే మానవ శాస్త్ర ప్రక్రియ పద్ధతులను తప్పనిసరిగా అధ్యయనం చేయాలి, తెలుసుకోవాలి. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్ర అధ్యయనము వల్ల వివిధ సంస్కృతులను నేర్చుకోవటము, సమాజము, సంస్కృతుల పట్ల అవగాహన, పరిధి, ఆలోచన, వాదన నైపుణ్యాలని ఎంతో మనము తెలుసుకోవటానికి వీలవుతూ ఉంటుంది అన్నమాట. ఈ విధమైన పద్ధతుల ద్వారా మనము ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్స్ ని తెలుసుకోవచ్చు, పదన పెట్టుకోవచ్చు అన్నమాట. సాంస్కృతిక వైవిధ్యాలను నేర్చుకోవటానికి వాటిలో వ్యత్యాసాలను అభినందించటము ఒక ప్రధానమైన అంశంగా ఏర్పడింది. ఒకరినొకరు పలకరించుకోవటము చాలా సంస్కృతుల్లో ప్రధానంగా ఉంటూ ఉంటుంది. సంస్కృతుల మధ్య భౌతిక అభివ్యక్తంగా వ్యత్యాసాలు ఉండవచ్చు, కానీ అమెరికన్ ఇతరులతో కలిసినప్పుడు వారిని పలకరించడానికి తమ చేతిని కరచాలనంగా అందియవచ్చు. భారతదేశంలో చేతులు జోడించి సంప్రదాయబద్ధంగా ఒకరినొకరు పలకరించుకోవడానికి నమస్తే అంటూ ఉంటాం. ఎక్కువగా ఈ ప్రక్రియ జరుగుతూ ఉంటుంది. ఉభయ సంస్కృతులలో అర్థము ఒకటే. ఈ రెండు ప్రక్రియ పద్ధతుల్లో యొక్క భావన అనేది ఒకటే ఉంటుంది అన్నమాట. అయినా పద్ధతుల్లో మార్పులు ఉంటాయి. ఇది ఒక సాధారణ ఉదాహరణగా మనం చెప్పుకోవచ్చు. ఆహారపు అలవాట్లు, మతపరమైన పద్ధతులు, మనము నివసించే ప్రపంచాన్ని గ్రహించే మార్గాలలో తేడాలు ఒక సంస్కృతి నుంచి మరొక సంస్కృతి భిన్నంగా ఉంటూ ఉంటాయి. ఈ వ్యత్యాసాలను అర్థం చేసుకొని అభినందించటంలో మానవ సమాజ శాస్త్రము ప్రధానంగా ఎంతో దోహదం చేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. ప్రవర్తనలో అంతర్లీనంగా తేడాలను గుర్తిస్తూ మానవ శాస్త్రములోని ఒక ఆలోచన విధానాన్ని విశ్వవ్యాప్తముగా మానవులు ఒకే రకంగా ఆలోచిస్తారని ఈ యొక్క ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్లో మనం తెలుసుకుంటూ ఉంటాం. సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రము, మానవ జీవితము, విభిన్న సంస్కృతుల తులనాత్మక దృక్పథానికి ఈ ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్ ఎంతో అవకాశం కల్పిస్తూ ఉంటుందన్నమాట. కావుననే ఈ విభాగము విశిష్టమైనది అనేది మనం పేర్కొంటూ ఉంటాము. ఈ శాస్త్రంలో ప్రపంచములో గల ఒకే సంస్కృతిని అర్థం చేసుకోవడానికి పరిమితి కాదు. ప్రజల స్వంత సందర్భాలు, వారి స్వంత ప్రపంచం పట్ల గల అవగాహన, ప్రాధాన్యతను మానవ సమాజ శాస్త్ర ఎథ్నోగ్రాఫికల్ మెథడ్లు నొక్కి చెప్తూ ఉంటాయి. రాజకీయ మార్పులు, ఆర్థిక అభివృద్ధి, పర్యావరణ సంక్షోభము, మానవ భద్రతపై ప్రశ్నలు ఈ ప్రపంచీకరణలో ముఖ్యమైన సమస్యలు కాగా, సంస్కృతులు, సమాజాల పట్ల అవగాహన కలిగి బహుళ సాంస్కృతిక దృక్పథాన్ని నిర్మించటము ఎంతో అవసరం అనేది కూడా మనం ఇక్కడ గ్రహించాలి. సాంస్కృతిక దృక్పథము జ్ఞాన దృష్టిలోనే సామాజిక మానవ శాస్త్రం యొక్క పాత్ర అనేది ఎంతో కీలకమైనది అనేది మనం చెప్పుకోవాలి. సాంస్కృతిక దృక్పథము ఒక ఉదాహరణగా మనం తీసుకున్నట్లయితే ఈ ఎథ్నోగ్రఫీలో విలియం హ్యావిలాండ్ ఇతరులు రచించిన పుస్తకము కల్చరల్ ఆంథ్రోపాలజీ ది హ్యూమన్ ఛాలెంజ్ అనే బుక్ నుంచి సాంస్కృతిక దృక్పథము మేము తెలుసుకోగలుగుతాం విపులంగా. ఉదాహరణ చూసినట్లయితే మానవులు నిద్రించటం అనేది ఒక సహజ జీవన ప్రక్రియగా అనిపించవచ్చు మనకి. శిశువులు నిద్రని సంస్కృతికి ఏమైనా సంబంధం ఉంటుందా అంటే అవుననే మనం సమాధానం చెప్పుకోవాలి. విభిన్న సంస్కృతుల యందు శిశువులు నిద్రావస్థ అలవాట్లు వ్యత్యాసంగా ఉంటూ ఉంటాయన్నమాట. ఈ యొక్క శిశువుల పెంపకము, పోషణపై సంస్కృతుల ప్రభావము ఎంతో గొప్పగా ఉంటూ ఉంటుంది. సంయుక్త రాష్ట్రాలలో శిశువులు తమ తల్లిదండ్రుల నుంచి విడిగా పడుకుంటూ ఉంటారు. అంటే అభివృద్ధి చెందిన దేశాలలో చనుపాలు ఇచ్చే తల్లులు శిశువుల వాళ్ళతో పాటు శిశువులతో పాటు నిద్రించటము చాలా సంస్కృతుల్లో నియమము. నిద్రించటము పట్ల ప్రయోజనాలు ఎన్నో కలవన్నమాట. ఏడ్చే పర్యాయాలు గణనీయంగా తగ్గుతూ ఉంటాయి. తల్లి దగ్గర శిశువు ఉన్నట్లయితే ఈ యొక్క తల్లి యొక్క శారీరక స్పర్శతో వాళ్ళు ఒక ప్రశాంతతని ఏర్పరచుకుంటూ ఉంటారన్నమాట. ఈ యొక్క ఈ SIDS ఇతర దేశాల కంటే మనకి ఒక సంయుక్త రాష్ట్రాల్లో మనకి ఎక్కువగా కనిపిస్తుంది. తర్వాత ఈ యొక్క సామాజిక సాంస్కృతిక మానవ శాస్త్ర మార్గదర్శకాలను మనం తీసుకున్నట్లయితే ఇతరుల సంస్కృతులను పక్షపాతంతో లేదా స్వంత సంస్కృతిలో పోల్చి చూసి ఇతరులు తమ కన్నా సాంస్కృతిక పద్ధతులు ఉన్నతమైనవని నిర్ణయించటాన్ని స్వజాతీయ సాంస్కృతికవాదం అంటూ ఉంటాము. ఈ యొక్క సంస్కృతులు లేదా సామాజిక సాంస్కృతిక పద్ధతులు భాష, ప్రవర్తన, వస్త్రధారణ, ఆహారపు అలవాట్లు ఒకరి స్వంత ప్రయోజనాల ప్రకారము నిర్ణయించబడుతూ ఉంటాయన్నమాట. యూరోపియన్లు ఇతరులను క్రూరులుగా చూస్తూ ఉంటారు. అతి ప్రాచీనమైన వారు అని ఎలా ప్రకటించారో గుర్తు చేసుకోండి. యూరోపియన్లు ఇతరులను క్రూరమైన వాళ్ళుగా ప్రచారాన్ని చేశారనమాట. ఇతరుల సంస్కృతి కంటే తమ సంస్కృతి ఉన్నతమైనదిగా యూరోపియన్లు భావించారు.
আজি আমি ভাৰতীয় সংস্কৃতিৰ পৰ্যটনৰ বাবে দৃষ্টিভংগী এই পাঠটিৰ ইউনিট নম্বৰ 3 সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণৰ বিষয়ে আলোচনা কৰিম। এইখিনি আলোচনা কৰিব যোৱাৰ আগতে আমি কিছুমান ইয়াত উদ্দেশ্য ব্যাখ্যা কৰিব লাগিব। গতিকে উদ্দেশ্যবিলাক আমি পাঠটো পঢ়াৰ পিছত আমি কিবিলাক জানিব পাৰিম এইখিনি উদ্দেশ্য ইয়াতে উল্লেখ কৰা আছে। এই পঢ়টো আমি যেতিয়া পঢ়িম তেতিয়া আমাৰ সাংস্কৃতিক সংৰক্ষণ সম্পৰ্কে কিছুমান দিশ আলোচনা কৰা হ'ব ইয়াতে, আৰু সেই বিষয়ে আমি জানিব পাৰিম কেনেকৈ সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰি। সেই বিষয়ে আমি জ্ঞান লাভ কৰিম। সংস্কৃতি হৈছে দেশ এখনৰ মেৰুদণ্ড, আৰু ইয়াক আমি এই সংৰক্ষণ কৰিবই লাগিব। আৰু সংস্কৃতিবিহীন দেশ থাকিব নোৱাৰে, সংস্কৃতিবিহীন মানুহ থাকিব নোৱাৰে, সংস্কৃতিবিহীন সমাজ থাকিব নোৱাৰে। প্ৰত্যেকৰে নিজা নিজা সংস্কৃতি আছে, আৰু এই বিষয়ে আমি আলোচনা কৰিম। এই গোটটো পঢ়াৰ পিছত আমি কিছুমান কথা জানিবলৈ পাৰিম, আৰু তাৰে ভিতৰত আছে সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণৰ ধাৰণাটো বুজি লওক। আমি সংস্কৃতি কেনেকৈ সংৰক্ষণ কৰিম সেই বিষয়ে আমি জানিবলৈ পাৰিম। সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণৰ গুৰুত্ব প্ৰশংসা কৰিম। সংস্কৃতিৰ সংৰক্ষণৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত তাৰ কি গুৰুত্ব আছে, তাৰ কি ইম্পৰ্টেঞ্চ আছে, সেই সম্বন্ধে আমি এই পাঠটোৰ পৰা জানিব পাৰিম। সংৰক্ষণৰ বাবে প্ৰচেষ্টা কৰা প্ৰয়োজনীয় মুখ্য ক্ষেত্ৰবোৰ আমি জানিম, যে কিবিলাক ক্ষেত্ৰক আমি সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব লাগে, কি ক্ষেত্ৰ সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব নালাগে। সেই প্ৰয়োজনীয় ক্ষেত্ৰবিলাক চিনাক্ত কৰি তাক আমি হেৰিটেজ ঐতিহ্য ক্ষেত্ৰ হিচাপে চিনাক্ত কৰি তাক আমি সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব লাগে, ৰক্ষণাবেক্ষণ দিব লাগে। আৰু সংৰক্ষণ কেনেদৰে প্ৰভাৱিত কৰিব পাৰি, আৰু সংৰক্ষণক আমি কেনেকৈ এটা প্ৰভাৱিত কৰিব পাৰোঁ, সেই বিষয়ে আমি এই পাঠটো আলোচনা কৰাৰ পিছত আমি জানিব পাৰিম। এতিয়া এই পাঠটো পঢ়োঁতে আমি এটা সাধাৰণ পৰিচয় দিব লাগিব, আৰু এই পৰিচয়টো আমি ইয়াতে এনেকৈ উল্লেখ কৰিব পাৰোঁ যে আমি ইয়াৰ আগত দুটা গোটত আমি এই আমাৰ ঐতিহাসিক শিক্ষাপথত ভাৰতীয় সংস্কৃতি আৰু ঐতিহ্য বিষয়ে আমি জানিছিলোঁ বা আলোচনা কৰিছিলোঁ। এই গোটত আমি ইয়াৰ সাংস্কৃতিক সংৰক্ষণৰ গুৰুত্বৰ বিষয়ে আলোচনা কৰিম। মূলতঃ ইয়াতে আমাৰ ইয়াৰ সংস্কৃতি আৰু ইয়াক কেনেদৰে সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰি সেই বিষয়ে আলোচনা কৰা হ'ব। আৰু সংস্কৃতি আৰু ঐতিহ্যৰ সংৰক্ষণে সমাজক সমৃদ্ধ কৰে। নিশ্চিতৰূপে এখন সমাজত যদি আমি সংস্কৃতি ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰোঁ, ই আমাক সমৃদ্ধ কৰিব আৰু মানুহক বিভিন্ন প্ৰকাৰে সহায় কৰিব। কাৰণ আমাৰ আজি যদি আমি 100 বছৰ আগতে খুজিছোঁ আমাৰ দেশ কেনে আছিল, আমি কেনেকৈ সংস্কৃতি, আমাৰ পৰম্পৰা কেনেকৈ আছিল, আমাৰ ঐতিহ্য কি, সেই বিষয়ে আমি উভতি চাব পাৰোঁ। আৰু ই এখন দেশৰ উন্নয়নক বিভিন্ন প্ৰকাৰে প্ৰতিফলিত কৰে। ইয়াত সমৃদ্ধি প্ৰশংসা কৰা হৈছে। সমৃদ্ধি যিবিলাক বিকাশ হৈছে, ডেভেলপমেণ্ট হৈছে, সেইবিলাকক প্ৰশংসা কৰা হৈছে। সাংস্কৃতিক পৰ্যটনৰ ক্ষেত্ৰতো মূল ধাৰণা হৈছে পৰিচিত কৰা ভাৰতীয় সংস্কৃতি থকা লোকসকলে যাতে বিক্ৰী কৰাৰ বাবে তেওঁলোকৰ প্ৰচেষ্টা ইয়াত সমল কঢ়িয়াই আনে। ইয়াৰ পিছত আমি জানিব পাৰিম যে আন্তৰ্জাতিক পৰ্যটনত ভাৰতক সাংস্কৃতিক গন্তব্যস্থান হিচাপে গণ্য কৰা হয়। তো আন্তৰ্জাতিক পৰ্যটনৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত টুৰিজিমৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত আমি দেখিছোঁ যে ভাৰতৰ সংস্কৃতি গন্তব্যস্থান বিভিন্ন দেশৰ পৰা আহি ভাৰতত তেওঁলোকে পৰ্যটন ক্ষেত্ৰখনত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আহি পেলাই চাব খোজে আৰু তাৰ পৰা জ্ঞান লাভ কৰিছে। আৰু যিবিলাকে প্ৰথমবাৰৰ কাৰণে ভাৰতলৈকে আহে, তেওঁলোকে ইমানে আকৰ্ষণীয় হয় যে ইমানেই ভাৰতীয় সংস্কৃতি ৰিচ, ইমানেই ভাৰতীয় ঐতিহ্য থকা দেশ, তো তাৰ কাৰণে তেওঁলোকে আকৰ্ষিত হয় আৰু তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অনুভৱ হয়, আৰু তেওঁলোকে ইয়াৰ পৰা বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অভিজ্ঞতা আহৰণ কৰে। আৰু তেওঁলোকে এইখন দেশত যেন বাৰে বাৰে আহিব, এইখন দেশত যেন তেওঁলোকৰ এটা গন্তব্যস্থান, তেনেধৰণে তেওঁলোকৰ এটা মনত ভাৱ উদ্ৰেক হয়। ভাৰত এনেকুৱা এটা পৃথিৱীৰ গন্তব্যস্থান য'ত আন্তৰ্জাতিক পৰ্যটকসকলে আহি পোৱাৰ পিছত সৰ্বাধিক দেশত অভিজ্ঞতা কৰে। এনেকুৱা এটা মজাৰ জেগা য'ত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে সাংস্কৃতি ঐতিহ্য বিৰাজমান। তো সেই দেশত তেওঁলোকে বিদেশী পৰ্যটকসকলে আহি পেলাই আমাৰ যিবিলাক ছাইট আছে, যিবিলাক জেগা আছে, সেইবিলাক তেওঁলোকে বিচাৰি ফুৰে, তাত তেওঁলোকে উপস্থিত হয় আৰু সেইবিলাক তেওঁলোকে অনুসন্ধান কৰে, আৰু তেওঁলোকে বহুত দিন ধৰি এই কামত নিয়োজিত হৈ থাকে আৰু ইয়াতে ব্যস্ত থাকে, আৰু বহুত সময় তেওঁলোকে অতিবাহিত কৰে। ভাৰতৰ কলা স্থাপত্য আৰু পুৰাতত্বৰ ৰূপত ঐতিহ্য সম্পদে পৰিপূৰ্ণ অন্যান্য সাংস্কৃতিক অভিব্যক্তি যেনে ভাৰতৰ আমি জানোৱেই ভাৰতৰ কলা স্থাপত্য আৰু পুৰাতত্ব একেবাৰে ঐতিহাসিক সম্পদে পৰিপূৰ্ণ বিভিন্ন ধৰণে সাংস্কৃতিক অভিব্যক্তি কৰা এখন দেশ। যেনে ইয়াত প্ৰদৰ্শন কলা কথা আমি ক'ব পাৰোঁ। নৃত্যৰ কথা ক'ব পাৰোঁ, নাটকৰ কথা ক'ব পাৰোঁ, মেলা কথা ক'ব পাৰোঁ, উৎসৱ আৰু অন্যান্য সাংস্কৃতিক অভিব্যক্তিৰ কথা ক'ব পাৰোঁ। বিভিন্ন ধৰণে এইবিলাক ইয়াত উদযাপন কৰা হয়, ইয়াত পালন কৰা হয়। বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ সাংস্কৃতিক বিৰাজমান, যেনেকৈ প্ৰদৰ্শন কলা, নৃত্য, নাটক, মেলা, উৎসৱ, এইবিলাকলৈকে বিদেশী বিভিন্ন দেশ বিদেশৰ ইয়াত পৰ্যটক আহে। তেওঁলোকে এইবিলাকত ভাগ লয় আৰু তেওঁলোকে ইয়াৰ পৰা আনন্দ উপভোগ কৰে আৰু লগতে এই দেশৰ আৰ্থ সামাজিক উন্নয়নো হয় ইয়াৰ ফলত। এই সাংস্কৃতিক অভিব্যক্তিবোৰে সাম্ভাব্য মনোৰঞ্জনৰ সম্পদ গঠন কৰে। নিশ্চিতৰূপে ইয়াতে মানুহে তেওঁলোকৰ সাংস্কৃতিক আদান প্ৰদান হয়, তেওঁলোকে তাৰ পৰা মনোৰঞ্জন পায় আৰু এই সম্পদসমূহ ঐতিহ্যৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত সৈতে যিকোনো দৃশ্যপটত সমৃদ্ধিত অৰিহণা যোগায়, দেশৰ সমৃদ্ধি বিকাশ বৃদ্ধিত অৰিহণা যোগায়, যি আকৰ্ষিত কৰিব পাৰে সাংস্কৃতিক অভিজ্ঞতাক। আৰু বিভিন্ন মানুহে বিভিন্ন পৰ্যটকে তেনেধৰণৰ কথা বিচাৰি থাকে আৰু তেওঁলোকে ইয়াৰ পৰা লাভ কৰিবলৈ সক্ষম হয়। এতিয়া আমি দেখিম যে ইয়াত কালচাৰ অফ টুৰিজিম ভাৰ্চাছ টুৰিজিম অফ কালচাৰ, পৰ্যটনৰ সংস্কৃতি বনাম পৰ্যটন সংস্কৃতি। তো ইয়াত দুই ধৰণে আমি চাব পাৰোঁ, কালচাৰ অফ টুৰিজিম, সাংস্কৃতিৰ পৰ্যটন আৰু পৰ্যটনৰ সংস্কৃতি। তো আমি এতিয়া দেখিবলৈ পাম যে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ জেট এয়াৰক্ৰাফ্ট শুভাৰম্ভ কৰা হৈছিল আৰু তাৰ ফলত সংগঠিত ব্যৱস্থা স্থাপন হৈছিল আৰু তেওঁলোক ধন্যবাদৰ পাত্ৰ আছিল কিয় কাৰণে বিভিন্ন সংখ্যক পৰ্যটক বিভিন্ন ৰাষ্ট্ৰৰ সীমা অতিক্ৰম কৰি বিভিন্ন দেশত তেওঁলোকৰ বিভিন্ন উদ্দেশ্যৰে তেওঁলোকে উপস্থিত হৈছিল আৰু ইয়াৰ ফলত এই টুৰিষ্টৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত কিছুমান আমি ফল পাইছিলোঁ আৰু সেইবোৰ আমি তলত আলোচনা কৰিবলৈ ল'ম। প্ৰথম কথা হ'ল আয়োজক দেশৰ অৰ্থনৈতিক কাৰ্যকলাপ আৰু বিকাশ বৃদ্ধি। নিশ্চিতৰূপে যিখন দেশত আয়োজন কৰে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ, আমি হেৰিৰ কথা কৈছোঁ, মেলাৰ কথা কৈছোঁ বা অন্যান্য বাণিজ্যিক আদান প্ৰদানৰ কথা কৈছোঁ বা বিভিন্ন ধৰণে যিবিলাক ঐতিহ্য থকা জেগা, সেইবিলাকত যেতিয়া বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ আয়োজন কৰা হ'ব, সেই দেশত অৰ্থনৈতিক কাৰ্যকলাপ বিকাশৰ বৃদ্ধি হ'ব। ডেফিনেটলি তাত মানুহ আহিব, তাত বিভিন্ন ক্ৰয় বিক্ৰয় হ'ব, তাত ব্যৱসায় হ'ব, তাৰ ফলত দেশৰ অৰ্থনৈতিক কাৰ্যকলাপ বৃদ্ধি হ'ব, নিযুক্তি সৃষ্টি হ'ব। নিশ্চিতৰূপে সেই মানুহবিলাকক বিভিন্ন ধৰণে সেৱা আগবঢ়াবৰ কাৰণে বিভিন্ন মানুহৰ প্ৰয়োজন হ'ব আৰু সেইবিলাকে তাত নিযুক্তি লাভ কৰিব। যান বাহন, খাদ্যৰ পৰা, হোটেল ৰেষ্টুৰেণ্টৰ পৰা আদি কৰি বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্ৰত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে মানুহ নিয়োজিত হ'ব আৰু এটা নিযুক্তিৰ পৰিৱেশ সৃষ্টি হ'ব। স্থানীয় কলা আৰু কাৰুশিল্পৰ সহজীকৰণ, যিবিলাক স্থানীয় কলা আছে বা তাত কাৰুশিল্প আছে, যাক আমি ক'ব পাৰোঁ যে লোকেল আৰ্টছ এণ্ড যিটো ক্ৰাফ্টছ, তাৰ এটা সহজ বিপণন পাব আৰু তাৰ ওচৰলৈকে মানুহ আহি আছে, তেওঁলোকে লৈ যাবলগীয়া হোৱা নাই, তাৰ ফলত তেওঁলোকৰ ক্ৰয় বিক্ৰয়ৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত যথেষ্ট সুবিধা হ'ব। যিবিলাক নিজ দেশৰ গন্তব্যস্থানৰ ছবি প্ৰক্ষেপণ আৰু যিবিলাক বাহিৰৰ পৰা দেশ আহিব, সেই লোকসকলৰ মাজত তেওঁলোকৰ এটা এক্সপ'জাৰ হ'ব, যাৰ ফলত সাংস্কৃতিক আত্মীয়কৰণ হ'ব, সংস্কৃতিৰ আদান প্ৰদান হ'ব। পৰ্যটকসকলক এখন ধৰ্মীয় দেশৰ ঐতিহ্যৰ সৈতে পৰিচয় কৰাই দিয়া হ'ব, যে পৰ্যটকসকলে সেই দেশত বিভিন্ন ধৰ্মৰ ক্ষেত্ৰৰ লগত পৰিচয় লাভ কৰিব। নিয়ন্ত্ৰিত আৰু পৰ্যটকৰ আগমনৰ অধিক সংখ্যাৰ নেতিবাচক প্ৰভাৱ হ'ব। ইয়াৰ পিছত আমি দেখিম যে এইখিনি আমাৰ লাভালাভ পৰ্যটন সংস্কৃতি বা আমি যিটো ক'ব গৈছোঁ যে পৰ্যটন সংস্কৃতি বা সংস্কৃতিৰ পৰ্যটন, আমি দুটা কথা ক'ব গৈছোঁ। তো ইয়াতে আমি দেখিছোঁ যে আয়োজক দেশে বিভিন্ন ধৰণে লাভান্বিত হৈছে আৰু কিছুমান ক্ষেত্ৰত কিছুমান আয়োজক দেশত ক্ষতি হোৱা দেখিবলৈ পোৱা গৈছে আৰু সেইবিলাক আমি তলত দেখিবলৈ পাম। আয়োজক গন্তব্যস্থানৰ সামগ্ৰী আৰু সেৱাৰ ওপৰত অত্যাধিক বোজা। যিখন দেশত আয়োজন কৰা হ'ব, এক্সেছিভ বাৰ্ডেন অন দ্য গুডছ এণ্ড ছাৰ্ভিচেছ অফ দ্য হোষ্ট ডেষ্টিনেশ্যনত নিশ্চিতৰূপে তাত এটা বাৰ্ডেন সৃষ্টি হ'ব, সেইবিলাক যোগান ধৰিব লাগিব। আয়োজক পৰিৱেশ প্ৰণালী পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক বহনক্ষমতাৰ ওপৰত এটা কৰ আৰোপ কৰা হ'ব, য'ত নেকি এই টেক্সিং দ্য ইক'লজিকেল কেৰিং কেপাচিটি অফ দ্য হোষ্ট ইক'চিষ্টেম। তাৰপিছত আমি দেখিবলৈ পাম চাহিদা ক্ৰমান্বয়ে বৃদ্ধি হোৱাৰ বাবে স্থায়ী আৰু সামগ্ৰী আৰু সেৱাৰ ব্যয় বৃদ্ধি হ'ব। নিশ্চিতভাৱে যেতিয়া ডিমাণ্ড থাকে, যেতিয়া চাহিদা থাকে, তেতিয়া তাৰ সামগ্ৰী বা সেৱাৰ ঊৰ্ধ্বগামী হয় মূল্য, আৰু তাৰ ফলত আমি দেখিম যে স্থানীয় লোকসকল ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হ'ব। স্থানীয় লোকসকলৰ প্ৰতিক্ৰিয়া কৰক আৰু তেওঁলোকে জীয়াই থাকিবলৈ বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্ৰত তেওঁলোকৰ জটিলতা তেওঁলোকে অনুভৱ কৰিব, কাৰণ তাত বিদেশী পৰ্যটক অহাৰ ফলত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তাৰ পৰিৱেশ পৰিস্থিতি পৰিৱৰ্তন হয়, আৰু লগতে মানুহবিলাকৰ আয় ইনকাম যদিও বাঢ়ে কিন্তু ব্যয়ো বিভিন্ন প্ৰকাৰে বৃদ্ধি হয়। সাংস্কৃতিকভাৱে ভংগুৰ সমাজত যিটো আমি দেখিছোঁ পৰ্যটকৰ অত্যাধিক যদি আহে, তাৰ ফলত কি হয় সাংস্কৃতিক প্ৰদূষণ আৰু সাংস্কৃতিক বিকৃতৰ ক্ষেত্ৰ হ'ব পাৰে। তো বিভিন্ন ধৰণে বিকৃত হ'ব পাৰে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণে প্ৰদূষিত হ'ব পাৰে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তাৰ আমি যিটো পৰিৱেশ, সেই পৰিৱেশটো বিনষ্ট হ'ব পাৰে। কাৰণ নিজৰ সংস্কৃতি বেলেগ, আনৰ সংস্কৃতি বেলেগ, তাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত যদি তেওঁলোকে এটা নতুনত্ব দিব খোজে আমাৰ পুৰণীয়া সংস্কৃতিৰ ওপৰত, তেতিয়া আমি নিশ্চিতভাৱে তাত আমাৰ এটা প্ৰদূষণ হ'ব, আৰু তাৰ ফলত আমাৰ বিকৃত হ'ব পাৰে সেই ক্ষেত্ৰখন। সাংস্কৃতিক প্ৰদূষণকাৰী বিকৃতিৰ এই পৰিঘটনা আৰম্ভ হ'লে ই অত্যাধিক কঠিন হয়, আৰু যদি তেনেধৰণৰ ঘটনা আৰম্ভ হয় তেতিয়াহ'লে ই বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হ'ব। কিন্তু বাণিজ্য স্বাৰ্থত কিছুমান কাম কৰিবলগীয়া হয়, যদিও আৰ্থ-সামাজিক পৰিৱেশটো উন্নত কৰিবলগীয়া হয়, তাৰ ফলত কিন্তু ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হয়। ইয়াৰ পিছত দেখিম আমি সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণ। আমি কেনেকৈ সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব লাগে সেই বিষয়ে আমি আলোচনা কৰিম। সাংস্কৃতিক পৰ্যটনে এফালে বিদেশী মুদ্ৰা উপাৰ্জন আৰু পৰ্যটন বিকাশত সহায় কৰে। নিশ্চিত ৰূপে সাংস্কৃতিকভাৱে যদি পৰ্যটন হয়, টুৰিষ্ট আহে, তেতিয়াহ'লে বিদেশী মুদ্ৰা আমি পাম, আৰু পৰ্যটনৰ যিখন ক্ষেত্ৰ তাত বিকাশৰ আমি এটা পৰিৱেশ পাম। আৰু একে সময়তে ভাৰতৰ সমৃদ্ধ সাংস্কৃতিক পৰম্পৰা আৰু ঐতিহ্যকো কিন্তু সি বিপদত পেলাইছে বিভিন্ন প্ৰকাৰে। এই পৰ্যটন যদি লাভ কৰা লোক আৰু যিসকলে এই ঐতিহ্য ধ্বংস হ'বলৈ চিন্তিত, সেইসকলৰ মাজত প্ৰশ্নৰ ওপৰত তীব্ৰ বিতৰ্ক চলিছে। কিছুমানে লাভান্বিত হৈছে, আৰু কিছুমানে এনেকুৱা চিন্তক আছে যিসকলে ইয়াৰ বিকৃতকৰণ বা ধ্বংসকৰণক লৈ পেলাই বিভিন্ন ধৰণে চিন্তাত পৰিছে। আৰু ব্যৱসায়ীসকলে তেওঁলোকৰ লাভালাভৰ কাৰণে তেওঁলোকে কাম কৰিব, আৰু সংৰক্ষণকাৰীসকলে তেওঁলোকে কেনেধৰণে সংৰক্ষিত কৰিব পাৰে সেই সম্পৰ্কে চিন্তা কৰিব। যিসকল লোকৰ পৰা লাভ হোৱাৰ প্ৰৱণতা আছে, পৰ্যটন বিকাশো হৈছে, পৰ্যটক আৰু ভ্ৰমণ সংস্থা, বিদেশী মুদ্ৰা, এইবিলাক যিবিলাক পৰ্যটক তেওঁলোকেও লাভান্বিত হৈছে, ভ্ৰমণ সংস্থাবিলাকেও লাভান্বিত হৈছে, কাৰণ তেওঁলোকে ভ্ৰমণকাৰীক আনি দিয়াৰ বিনিময়ত তেওঁলোকৰ আয় ইনকাম হৈছে, বিদেশী মুদ্ৰা উপাৰ্জন কৰা হৈছে, ৰাজ্যৰ অন্যান্য কৰ তাত আৰোপ কৰা হৈছে, স্থানীয় হিতাধিকাৰী আৰু ব্যৱসায়িক গোট আছে কিছুমান, তেওঁলোকেও লাভান্বিত হৈছে। কিন্তু এই যিবিলাক গোট আছে, যিবিলাকে চিন্তিত হৈ পৰিছে এই ধ্বংসক লৈ পেলাই, তেওঁলোকৰ তেনেধৰণে কোনো লাভান্বিত হোৱা নাই। এতিয়া এক ঐক্যমতত আৰু দুটা গ্ৰুপৰ মাজত, আমি দলৰ মাজত এটা ঐক্যমতত উপনীত হ'ব লাগিব, আৰু উদ্ভৱ হৈছে যে পৰ্যটনৰ মাজত এক ভাৰসাম্য নিৰ্ভৰ কৰিব লাগিব, যাতে তাৰ সাংস্কৃতিৰ প্ৰতি কোনো ধৰণৰ ভাবুকি নাহে। আৰু আমি যদিও কৈছোঁ যে ভাৰসাম্য বজাই ৰাখিব লাগিব, কিন্তু ভাৰসাম্য ৰখাটো ইমান সহজ কাম নহয়, কাৰণ দুই ধৰণে কাম কৰিব। তাত সংস্কৃতি ব্যৱসায়ীসকলে বা বিভিন্ন ধৰণে জড়িত হৈ থকা লাগে, তেওঁলোকে ইকনমিক বেনিফিটৰ কথা চিন্তা কৰিব, আৰু তাৰ ফলত আমাৰ সংস্কৃতি প্ৰদূষিত হ'ব, আৰু সংস্কৃতিত আমাৰ বিৰূপ প্ৰভাৱ পৰিব। আমি কিছুমান কথা অনুভৱ কৰিব পাৰোঁ যে ঐতিহ্য আৰু সংস্কৃতিৰ এটা ক্ষেত্ৰ সংৰক্ষণ ইয়াত বিচ্ছিন্নতাপ্ৰাপ্ত কৰিব আমি নোৱাৰোঁ। তেনেকৈ এইটো এটা সমন্বিত প্ৰচেষ্টা হ'ব লাগিব, তাত সমন্বিত ইউনিফাইড এটা এফৰ্ট হ'ব লাগিব, তেতিয়াই আমি ৰক্ষা কৰিব পাৰিম। সংৰক্ষণৰ আটাইতকৈ গুৰুত্বপূৰ্ণ দিশটো হ'ল স্থানীয় জনসাধাৰণৰ অংশগ্ৰহণ, আৰু এই সংৰক্ষণৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত স্থানীয় জনসাধাৰণে যদি অংশগ্ৰহণ নকৰে, তেতিয়াহ'লে খুব জটিল হয়, কাৰণ তেওঁলোকে চিহ্নিত কৰিব পাৰে, তেওঁলোকে ৰক্ষণাবেক্ষণ দিব পাৰে, সেইকাৰণে তেওঁলোকৰ অংশগ্ৰহণ অতিকৈ প্ৰয়োজনীয়। বিশাল সম্পদ থকা ৰাজ্যখনৰ নিশ্চিতভাৱে উন্নত সংৰক্ষণৰ প্ৰচেষ্টাত সহায় কৰে। নিশ্চিতভাৱে সেইবিলাক ৰাজ্যত তেওঁলোকৰ উন্নত কৰাত সহায় কৰিব, তেওঁলোকৰ স্থিতি ইয়াৰ উপৰিও বেচৰকাৰী সংগঠন, ভ্ৰমণ আৰু পৰ্যটন উদ্যোগ আৰু অন্যান্য স্থানীয় সংস্থাসমূহে ইতিবাচক উপায়েৰে অৱদান আগবঢ়াব পাৰে। আৰু যিবিলাক সংস্থা আছে তাৰ মাজতে অৰ্থনৈতিক লাভৰ কথা থাকিবই, তাৰ উপৰিও তেওঁলোকে কিন্তু এই সংস্থা আৰু তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন উপায়েৰে অৱদান আগবঢ়াব পাৰে আৰু আমাৰ সংস্কৃতি যাতে আমি কনজাৰ্ভ কৰিব পাৰোঁ, সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰোঁ, তাত তেওঁলোকে সহায়ৰ হাত আগবঢ়াব পাৰে। সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণৰ পৰা প্ৰচেষ্টা লৈ যোৱাৰ আগতে আমি প্ৰথমে ইয়াৰ কিছুমান কথা আমি ধাৰণা এটা ল'ব লাগিব, কেনেকৈ আমি কৰিম। আৰু ভাৰতীয় ঐতিহ্য আমি জানোৱেই, ভাৰতীয় ঐতিহ্য বিশাল আৰু সুবিস্তাৰিত। আমি যদি চমুকৈ পৰিৱেশ আৰু প্ৰাকৃতিক সম্পদ যদি আমি অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰোঁ, পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহক আমি ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্য, ভাৰতীয় সাহিত্য আৰু ভাষাবোৰ, ভাৰতীয় ভাস্কৰ্য আৰু চিত্ৰকলা, সংগীত নৃত্য পৰম্পৰা, থিয়েটাৰ আৰু লোককলা, হস্তশিল্প আৰু কাৰুশিল্পৰ আৰ্থসামাজিক ঐতিহ্য, এনেকৈ আমি ভাগ কৰি চমুকৈ আমি আমাৰ বিষয়খিনি আমি ইয়াত আলোচনা কৰিব পাৰোঁ। পৰিৱেশ আৰু প্ৰাকৃতিক সম্পদৰ অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰিব পাৰোঁ আমি। পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহ আমি আমাৰ যে ঐতিহ্য, ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্য সেইটো আমি চাব পাৰোঁ। ভাৰতীয় সাহিত্য আৰু ভাষাবোৰ আমি চাব পাৰোঁ। ভাৰতীয় ভাস্কৰ্য চিত্ৰকলা, গতিকে এই আটাইবোৰ আমি ইয়াত আলোচনা কৰিব পাৰোঁ। আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ সুবিধাৰ বাবে আমাক এই গোটেইখিনিকে আমি 4টা বহল শাখাত আমি আলোচনা কৰিম। 4টা ভাগত ভাগ কৰি লোৱা হৈছে এই বস্তুখিনি। প্ৰথমটোতে আছে পৰিৱেশ আৰু প্ৰাকৃতিক সম্পদৰ সংৰক্ষণ, দ্বিতীয়তে ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্য, পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ মনুমেণ্টছ আছে, বিভিন্ন আৰ্কিঅলজিকেল চাইট আছে, আৰু হিষ্টৰিকেল আমাৰ হেৰিটেজ আছে। আমাৰ শৈল্পিক আৰু সাংস্কৃতিক ঐতিহ্যৰ সংৰক্ষণ আমি কৰিব পাৰোঁ। ঠিক তেনেকৈ আমি সাংস্কৃতিকভাৱে সুৰক্ষাৰ ওপৰত বিশেষ গুৰুত্ব দি আৰ্থসামাজিক ঐতিহ্য আমি সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। তো আমি এনেকৈ 4টা ভাগত আমি গোটেই বিষয়টো আলোচনা কৰাব পাৰোঁ। আৰু সমাজতাত্ত্বিক আৰু অৰ্থনৈতিকভাৱে সংবেদনশীল ভংগুৰ সম্প্ৰদায় যেনে জনজাতীয় বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ লোক আছে, তাত পাহাৰ আছে, মৰুভূমি আছে, উপকূলীয় অঞ্চল আছে। এতিয়া আমি আমাৰ সংস্কৃতি সংৰক্ষণ ইয়াৰ বিস্তৃত অৰ্থত কেনেদৰে প্ৰচাৰ কৰিব পাৰোঁ সেই বিষয়ে বিতংভাৱে আমি আলোচনা কৰিম। প্ৰাকৃতিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ বা সম্পদ আৰু পৰিৱেশ। ভাৰতত আমাৰ বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ ভৌগোলিক বৈচিত্ৰতা আছে, আমি সেইটো জানোৱেই, আৰু বিশ্বৰ ভিতৰতে আমি অনন্য, যেনে আমাৰ পৰ্বত, মৰুভূমি, উপকূলীয় অঞ্চল, নদী, হ্ৰদ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ প্ৰাণী আৰু উদ্ভিদ আমাৰ দেশত পোৱা যায়। গতিকে সম্ভৱতঃ আমি এই ক্ষেত্ৰত আমি বিশেষ স্থান লাভ কৰিব পাৰোঁ, যেনে পৰ্বত, মৰুভূমি, উপকূলীয় অঞ্চল, নদী আৰু হ্ৰদ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ প্ৰাণী আৰু উদ্ভিদ পোৱা যায়, তাৰ কাৰণে আমি গৌৰৱ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। আৰু গোৱা এনেকুৱা এটা জেগা যে পৃথিৱীৰ সাগৰ সমুদ্ৰৰ তীৰপ্ৰেমীসকলৰ বাবে যথেষ্ট সৰ্বশ্ৰেষ্ঠ পৰিচিত যিটো এটা পৰ্যটন গন্তব্যস্থান হৈছে গোৱা। গোৱাত প্ৰায়ভাগ মানুহে পৰ্যটনৰ কাৰণে যায়, তেওঁ ফুৰিবলৈ যায়, টুৰিষ্ট হিচাপে যায়। ৰাজস্থানৰ যিটো মৰুভূমি আছে, মৰুভূমি আছে, আৰু তাত প্ৰতি বছৰে ঘৰুৱা, দেশীয় আৰু আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় পৰ্যটক আহে, আৰু হাজাৰ হাজাৰ পৰ্যটক আহি তাত আকৰ্ষিত কৰে। হিমালয়তো পৰ্যটন হয়, আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন অভিজ্ঞতা লাভ কৰা হয়। প্ৰাকৃতিক ঐতিহ্যৰ সৰ্বশ্ৰেষ্ঠ আমাৰ ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় উদ্যান আছে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ ঐতিহ্য আছে, উদ্যানসমূহ আছে, আৰু বন্য জীৱৰ অভয়াৰণ্য আছে। আমি কাজিৰঙাত ইউনিহৰ্ণ বা এশিঙীয়া গড় আমি দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ, বা ৰণথম্বৰত আমি বাঘ বা কানহা নেশ্যনেল পাৰ্কত পাওঁ, বা পেৰিয়াৰত আমি হাতী, বা ভৰতপুৰত চাইবেৰিয়ান ক্ৰেন আমি দেখিবলৈ পাওঁ। নিখুঁত সংখ্য আৰু বৈচিত্ৰ্য আমাৰ দেশৰ উপলব্ধ প্ৰাণী আৰু উদ্ভিদৰ ইয়াতে আমাৰ এটা সুন্দৰ পৰিৱেশ সৃষ্টি হয়, আৰু ই আমাৰ অন্যতম মুখ্য শক্তি, আৰু এইবিলাকে আমাৰ এটা পৰ্যটনৰ ক্ষেত্ৰতে আমাক বিশেষভাৱে সহায় কৰি আহিছে। কিন্তু দেশী বিদেশী পৰ্যটকৰ ক্ৰমান্বয়ে বাঢ়ি যেতিয়া আহিব, যেতিয়া নিজৰ দেশত জনসংখ্যা বাঢ়ে তেতিয়া অসুবিধা হয়, আৰু যেতিয়া দেশী বিদেশী এই পৰ্যটকসকলে সেই নিৰ্দিষ্ট অঞ্চলবিলাকলৈকে যোৱা আৰম্ভ কৰিব, তেতিয়াহ'লে তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ হস্তক্ষেপ আৰম্ভ হয় আৰু তাৰ পৰিস্থিতি এই বিভিন্ন ধৰণে এইটো পৰিস্থিতি তন্ত্ৰৰ বাবে প্ৰতিৰোধী প্ৰমাণিত হৈছে আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ৰেগুলেশ্যন কৰিবলগীয়া হয়। বৃহৎ সংখ্যক পৰ্যটকৰ আগমনৰ ফলত কি হয়, যিটো নিজৰ ইক'চিষ্টেমত আমি শব্দ, বায়ু প্ৰদূষণ, উদ্ভিদ জীৱ জন্তু তেওঁলোকৰ যিটো কল্যাণ, তেওঁলোকৰ বিকাশ এই ক্ষেত্ৰত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে প্ৰভাৱিত হয় আৰু ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হয়। সেয়ে বিশেষসকলে কৈছে যে তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে পৰিৱেশ প্ৰণালী আৰু পৰ্যটন কৰ্তৃপক্ষবিলাকে কাম কৰিব লাগে, যাতে এনেধৰণৰ সমস্যাৰ সন্মুখীন হ'বলগীয়া নহয়। আৰু তাতে প্ৰতিদিনে কিমান দৰ্শনাৰ্থী যাব, কিমান নাযাব এইবিলাক নিৰ্ধাৰিত কৰিব লাগে, তাৰ অভাৰ ক্ৰাউডেড হ'ব নালাগে। আৰু এইটো বহুতৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত অনুশীলন কৰা হৈছে আৰু ৰন্থমবোৰ চবাই ঠাইত ভাৰতৰ আৰু বিভিন্ন জীৱ জন্তু বা মধুপুৰ ৰাজস্থানত বাঘ চাবলৈ বছৰি বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পৰ্যটক আহে। পৰিৱেশ পৰ্যটনৰ লক্ষ্য হৈছে সেই ধৰণৰ দায়িত্বশীল পৰ্যটনৰ প্ৰচাৰ কৰা, যি পৰিৱেশ অনুকূল আৰু যি সূক্ষ্ম পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক ভাৰসাম্য ধ্বংস নকৰে। উদ্ভিদৰ মাজত সম্পৰ্ক বৃদ্ধি হ'ব আৰু প্ৰদত্ত হেবিটেল মাইক্ৰ পৰিৱেশ প্ৰণালী আমি তাত পাম। যদি আমি আমাৰ পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ কৰাত বিফল হওঁ, তেন্তে আমাৰ কি হ'ব, অন্যান্য সংস্কৃতি আমি এই ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব নোৱাৰিম, কাৰণ এইবোৰ মুখ্যতঃ তেওঁলোকৰ জীয়াই থকাৰ বাবে পৰিৱেশৰ ওপৰত নিৰ্ভৰশীল। যদি পৰিৱেশ ভালে নাথাকে সেইবোৰ জীয়াই নাথাকিব আৰু আমাৰ যিটো ঐতিহ্য সেইটো গঢ়ি নাথাকিব। যিকোনো পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক সন্তুলনৰ ভাৰসাম্যতাই কমন সম্পৰ্কবোৰ বিচলিত কৰিব আৰু যাৰ ফলত হ'ব দুৰ্যোগ আৰু পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ দুৰ্যোগ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অসুবিধাৰ সন্মুখীন হ'ব। এই পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক সংবেদনশীল যিখন দেশৰ ইক'চিষ্টেমত পৰিচালনা কৰা কৰ্তৃপক্ষ থাকে, তেওঁলোকে দৰ্শনাৰ্থী আৰু টুৰ অপাৰেটৰৰ কি কৰিব লাগে, কি কৰিব নালাগে কঠোৰভাৱে তাত বলবৎ কৰিব লাগে, তাত নিৰ্দেশনা থাকিব লাগে। দৰ্শনাৰ্থীসকলক অঞ্চলটোৰ মিতব্যয়ী প্ৰাকৃতিক সম্পদৰ বিষয়ে শিক্ষিত কৰাৰ যথেষ্ট প্ৰয়োজন আছে আৰু গন্তব্যস্থান বহন ক্ষমতাটো চাব লাগে। আমাৰ প্ৰাকৃতিক আৰু পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক এই ঐতিহ্য ইমান আশ্চৰ্যকৰ সম্পদ, যি সময়ে সময়ে লাভ কৰি মাতৃ প্ৰকৃতিৰ দ্বাৰা পুনৰ অনা হয় আৰু দৰ্শনাৰ্থীসকলে সঁচাকৈয়ে এবাৰ পাব পাৰে জীৱনকালৰ অভিজ্ঞতা। যদিহে দৰ্শনাৰ্থীৰ আগমন পৰিৱেশ অনুকূল বহনক্ষম হয়, তেওঁলোকৰ বহনক্ষম হ'ব লাগিব, পৰিৱেশ অনুকূল হ'ব লাগিব। এতিয়া লেণ্ডশ্লাইড হৈ থাকিলে তাত দৰ্শনাৰ্থী আহিব নোৱাৰে, তাত বহনক্ষম বুলি ক'লে অত্যাধিক হ'লে তেওঁলোক আহিব নোৱাৰিব, বিভিন্ন কাৰক থাকে। প্ৰাকৃতিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণৰ ব্যৱস্থাপনাৰ আন এটা দিশ হ'ল উৎপন্ন উপাৰ্জন, যিবিলাক দৰ্শনাৰ্থীৰ পৰা প্ৰৱেশ মাচুল হয় আৰু সেইবিলাক যিয়ে তাৰ ব্যৱস্থাপনা কৰে তেওঁলোকক আচলতে ঘূৰাই দিব লাগে আৰু তাৰে সংৰক্ষণৰ বাবে বৈজ্ঞানিক পদ্ধতি বা পদক্ষেপ হাতত ল'ব লাগে আৰু কাম কৰিব লাগে। ইয়াৰ বাবে গৱেষণা আৰু বিকাশ খণ্ডত বিনিয়োগ কৰাৰ যথেষ্ট প্ৰয়োজন আছে, কাৰণ গৱেষণা কৰিলে তাৰ খুঁটিনাটিবিলাক ধৰা পৰিব। পৰিৱেশ পৰ্যটনৰ গন্তব্যস্থান যাতে তেওঁলোকৰ সঠিক যন্ত্ৰ প্ৰসাৰ আৰু পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক স্বাস্থ্য নিশ্চিত কৰিব পাৰে, এইটো খুব ডাঙৰ কথা। পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক স্বাস্থ্য নিশ্চিত কৰিব পাৰিব লাগিব। আমি ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় উদ্যানসমূহৰ পৰিৱেশ পৰ্যটন আৰু ব্যৱস্থাপনাৰ ফলত আমি মডেলবোৰৰ প্ৰতিলিপি আমি আমেৰিকা যুক্তৰাষ্ট্ৰ বা দক্ষিণ আফ্ৰিকা বা বিভিন্ন দেশৰ আমি অনুকৰণ কৰিব পাৰোঁ আৰু আমাৰ পৰিস্থিতি সাপেক্ষে আমি তাত প্ৰয়োজনীয় ব্যৱস্থা হাতত ল'ব পাৰোঁ। ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ, পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আছে, ঐতিহাসিক এই স্থান আছে, আমি দেখিবলৈ পাম। ভাৰতৰ ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্য কেৱল বিভিন্ন ধৰ্মৰ বাবে সমৰ্পিত বুলি এনেকৈ আমি ক'ব নোৱাৰোঁ। আমাৰ বিভিন্ন ইয়াৰ লগতে পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান, শিলঘটা, গুহা, প্ৰসাদ, ভেলী, ঘৰ আৰু জীৱন্ত ঐতিহ্য শতিকা জুৰি বিকশিত হৈছে বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্ৰত। শিলঘটাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত যিটো ৰক কাট কেভ আছে বা বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ প্ৰসাদ আছে, ভেলী আছে, ঘৰ আছে। ঐতিহাসিক ধ্বংসাৱশেষ আৰু স্থায়ী স্মাৰকৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত সাংস্কৃতিক ঐতিহ্য বহলভাৱে আমি নিম্নলিখিত লক্ষ্য কৰিব পাৰোঁ, যাক আমি যেনেকৈ ভাগ কৰিব পাৰোঁ প্ৰাগ ঐতিহাসিক অৱস্থিত প্ৰি হিষ্টৰিক ৰিমেইনছ যিবিলাক আছে আগত, প্ৰাগ ঐতিহাসিক আৰু প্ৰাৰম্ভিক ঐতিহাসিক স্থানসমূহ য'ত নেকি প্ৰি হিষ্টৰিক আৰু আৰ্লি হিষ্টৰিক আমাৰ চাইট আছে। ধৰ্মীয় অট্টালিকা যিবিলাক ৰিলিজিয়াছ এডিফিচ আছে, মেগালিথিক মেগালিথিক যিবিলাক ৰিমেইন আছে সেই যুগৰ শিলগতা গুহাসমূহ, বিভিন্ন ধৰ্মৰ মন্দিৰ থাকিব পাৰে, মছজিদ আৰু সমাধিবিলাক, প্ৰসাদ, হাভেলি, ঘৰ আৰু বাগিচা আৰু বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অট্টালিকা। যিবিলাক আমি শ্ৰেণী বিভাজন পালোঁ, কিন্তু এই শ্ৰেণী বিভাজন একেবাৰে পাৰফেক্ট নহয়। আমি আমাৰ সুবিধাৰ কাৰণে আমি আলোচনা কৰিছোঁ ইয়াতে বেছিভাগ স্মাৰক দৰ্শন আগ্ৰহৰ কাৰণে কৰা হৈছে, আৰু কিছুমান জীৱিত সংস্কৃতিৰ অংশ মানুহে উপাসনা স্থান হিচাপে ব্যৱহাৰ কৰে। যেনে আমি যদি জীৱিত বুলি কওঁ, জীৱিত বুলি কোৱাৰ লগে লগে আমাৰ জীৱিত কালচাৰৰ শ্ৰেণীত আমাৰ পুৰীৰ মন্দিৰৰ কথা, পুৰী জগন্নাথ মন্দিৰৰ শ্ৰী শিৱ ভগৱান প্ৰভু জগন্নাথ মন্দিৰৰ কথা আমি ক'ব পাৰোঁ, দিল্লীৰ জামা মছজিদৰ কথা আমি ক'ব পাৰোঁ। তাৰপিছত মইনুদ্দিন চিস্তি আৰু নিজামুদ্দিন আউলিয়াৰ য'ত সমাধি আছে আমি তাকো অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰিব পাৰোঁ, আৰু বিভিন্ন আমি তাত অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰিব পাৰোঁ। আৰু ইয়াৰ কাৰণে আমাক এটা পৃথক সংৰক্ষণৰ প্ৰয়োজন আছে। এইবোৰ সন্দৰ্ভত আমি যদি ক'ব যাওঁ, চিকিৎসকে কৃষ্ণ মেননে এটা সুন্দৰভাৱে তেওঁ এটা আলোচনা কৰিছে আৰু এটা প্ৰবন্ধ আগবঢ়াইছে। ভাৰতৰ সাংস্কৃতিক পৰ্যটনৰ দ্বিধা ঐতিহাসিক ঐতিহ্যৰ সুৰক্ষাৰ বাবে সমগ্ৰ বিশ্বতে নিৰ্মাণ কৰা হয়। সাংস্কৃতিক আৰু সম্পত্তি সুৰক্ষাৰ বাবে আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ, সংস্কৃতি সুৰক্ষাৰ কাৰণে বা সম্পদ সুৰক্ষাৰ কাৰণে, সংস্কৃতি আৰু সম্পত্তি সুৰক্ষাৰ কাৰণে বিভিন্ন কাম কৰিবলগীয়া হৈছে, আৰু তাৰ কাৰণে 1809 চনত আইন প্ৰণয়ন কৰা হৈছিল। আৰু সেইখন আইন ফ্ৰান্সত এখন প্ৰথম দেশ আছিল, আৰু প্ৰথম তেওঁলোকে এই আইন প্ৰৱৰ্তন কৰিছিল। ভাৰতে তাৰ পিছে ভাৰতীয় বহি থকা নাই। ভাৰতীয় তাৰপিছত 1878 চনত ভাৰতীয় ট্ৰেজাৰ আইন প্ৰণয়ন কৰিছিল, যাতে এইবিলাক সুৰক্ষিত হয়, সংৰক্ষিত হয়। গ্ৰীচে 1887 চনত আইন এখন প্ৰণয়ন কৰিছিল, য'ত নেকি এই খনন আৰু সম্পত্তিৰ ওপৰত এই আইনখন প্ৰযোজ্য হৈছিলে। আৰু 1897 চনত ইজিপ্তে খনন নিয়ন্ত্ৰণৰ বাবে এখন আইন পাছ কৰিছিল। পুনৰ ভাৰতে কৰিছিল 1878, আৰু পুনৰ 1904 চনত এখন আইন প্ৰৱৰ্তন কৰিছিলে। ভাৰতত প্ৰাচীন স্মাৰক সংৰক্ষণ আইন গৃহীত হৈছিল। স্মাৰকসমূহৰ সংৰক্ষণ, খনন, পুৰাকীৰ্তিৰ সুৰক্ষা আৰু নিয়ন্ত্ৰণ, এইখিনি লৈ পেলাই আইন প্ৰণয়ন কৰা হৈছিল। কাৰণ আইন যদি নাথাকে, মানুহে যধে মধে এইবিলাক ধ্বংস কৰিব আৰু তাৰ সুৰক্ষাৰ কাৰণে কোনো ব্যৱস্থা নল'ব। ভাৰতীয় পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক জৰীপ 1861 চনত স্থাপিত হৈছিল, আৰু তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন কাৰ্যসূচী হাতত লৈছিল, বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তেওঁলোকে দায়বদ্ধতা পালন কৰিছিল, তেওঁলোকে গুৰুত্ব বুজি বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তেওঁলোকে কাম কৰিছিল, আৰু বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ তাত ঘোষণা কৰা হৈছিল। 1951 বৰ্ষত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় গুৰুত্ব অনুসৰি ঐতিহাসিক স্মাৰক ভাৰত চৰকাৰে প্ৰৱৰ্তন কৰিছিল। আৰু এই ASI হৈছে দুটা কেন্দ্ৰীয় আইনৰ কাৰ্যকৰী সংস্থা, আৰু সেই সংস্থা দুটা হ'ল প্ৰাচীন স্মাৰক আৰু পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক স্থান আৰু অৱশিষ্ট আইন। সেইখন আইন আছিল 1958 চনত, আৰু এখন দ্য এণ্টিকুইটিজ এণ্ড আৰ্ট ট্ৰেজাৰ এক্ট, সেইখন হৈছিল 1972 চনত। কেন্দ্ৰীয়ভাৱে সুৰক্ষিত স্মাৰক আৰু স্থানৰ মুঠ সংখ্যা আমাৰ যদি আমি চাব যাওঁ, লেটেষ্ট ডাটা মতে 3517টা জেগা চিনাক্ত কৰা হৈছে কেন্দ্ৰীয়ভাৱে সুৰক্ষিত স্মাৰক আৰু স্থানত। তাৰপিছত পুৰাতত্ত্ব এক সমন্বয় বিষয় হোৱাৰ বাবে ভাৰতৰ আন ৰাজ্যসমূহেও একেধৰণে আইন প্ৰণয়ন কৰিছিল। কেন্দ্ৰীয় আইন আৰু সুৰক্ষিত স্মাৰক আৰু পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক ওপৰত আধাৰিত যিবোৰ আছে, আৰু সেইবোৰ 100 বছৰতকৈ যদি বেছি সময় হৈছে তেওঁলোকৰ অস্তিত্ব আছে, সেইবিলাক ইয়াৰ ভিতৰত ধৰা হৈছে। আৰু যিবিলাক আমি দেখিছোঁ যে কলা সংস্কৃতি, আৰু সেইবিলাকৰ বাবে 75 বছৰ হ'লে সেই আইনৰ হিচাপত প্ৰাচীনতা হিচাপে ঘোষণা কৰা হ'ব। বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্যৰ আমি তালিকা এখন পাম আমি এখন ৱৰ্ল্ড হেৰিটেজ লিষ্ট আমি ইয়াতে পাম ৱৰ্ল্ড হেৰিটেজ লিষ্ট আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ এই লিষ্টখনত বিশ্বৰ ইউনেস্কোৰ সাধাৰণ সন্মিলন হৈছিল আৰু সেই সন্মিলন হৈছিল 1972 চনত আৰু এটা প্ৰস্তাৱ গ্ৰহণ কৰা হৈছিল আৰু ইয়াতে বিশ্ব সাংস্কৃতিক আৰু প্ৰাকৃতিক ঐতিহ্য সংস্থাৰ জন্ম দিয়া হৈছিল আৰু এই যিখন মঞ্চ আছিল এই মঞ্চৰ উদ্দেশ্য আছিল বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্য নিৰ্মাণ কৰা বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্য ৱৰ্ল্ডলৈকে গৈছিল তাৰ উদ্দেশ্য আছিল ৱৰ্ল্ড হেৰিটেজৰ কথা চিন্তা কৰা হৈছিল স্থান আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহ তালিকাভুক্ত কৰা সদস্য দেশসমূহ বিভিন্ন যিবিলাকে স্থান প্লেচ আৰু স্মাৰকসমূহ চিনাক্ত কৰিছে অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰা সদস্য দেশসমূহ যাৰ সুৰক্ষা হৈছে মানৱ জাতিৰ চিন্তা সন্মিলন বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্যৰ সংজ্ঞা দিয়া হৈছিল আৰু বিশ্ব ঐতিহ্যৰ এখন তালিকা আঁকিছিল য'ত 378টা সাংস্কৃতিক চাইট অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰিছিল তাৰে ভিতৰত ভাৰতৰ 16টা সাংস্কৃতিক স্থান আৰু 4টা প্ৰাকৃতিক স্থান চিনাক্ত কৰিছিল ভাৰতৰ 16টা আৰু 4টাই সেই তালিকাত স্থান পাইছিল এই চাইটসমূহ আন্তৰ্জাতিক আৰু ঘৰুৱা পৰ্যটকৰ বাবে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ তাৰকাক আকৰ্ষণ কৰিছিল বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ লোক ইয়াতে আহিছিলে আৰু সুৰক্ষা দিয়া যথেষ্ট প্ৰয়োজন আছে নিশ্চিতভাৱে এইবিলাক সুৰক্ষিত কৰিব লাগিব সুৰক্ষিত কৰি ৰাখিবই লাগিব পৰৱৰ্তী কালৰ বাবে এই সাংস্কৃতিক বৈশিষ্ট্যবোৰৰ সংৰক্ষণ কৰা আৰু পৰিচালনা কৰাৰ অনুমতি দিয়া আৰু এই স্থানবোৰৰ দৰ্শন নিয়ন্ত্ৰণ কৰে যাতে অত্যাধিক ডিজিটেল পৰ্যটকে প্ৰৱেশ কৰিব নালাগে তো মূল কথাটো হৈছে ইয়াত সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব লাগিল ইয়াত খুব বেছি মানুহৰ জনসমাগম হ'ব নোৱাৰে কাৰণ তাৰ পৰিৱেশ বিনষ্ট হ'ব পাৰে তাৰ কাৰণে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ নিয়ন্ত্ৰণৰ প্ৰয়োজন আৰু আমি সেইকাৰণে দেখিব পাওঁ যে বহুত জেগাত আমি যদি যাওঁ তাত আমাক কিছুমান বস্তু চুবলৈ দিয়া নহয় তাত লিখা থাকে চুলে জৰিমনা ভৰিব লাগিব কাৰণ যদি প্ৰত্যেকজন মানুহে তাক চুই যায় এই নিশ্চয় অনিষ্ট হ'ব বা নষ্ট হৈ যোৱাৰ সম্ভাৱনা থাকে প্ৰশান্ত মহাসাগৰীয় এছিয়া ভ্ৰমণ সংস্থাৰ দ্বাৰা আয়োজিত 1979 চনত পৰ্যটন আৰু ঐতিহ্য সন্মিলন এখন হৈছিল আৰু এই ক্ষেত্ৰত সহযোগিতাৰ বাবে পৰ্যটন উদ্যোগৰ উদ্বেগ আৰু আকাংক্ষা প্ৰতিফলিত কৰে এই যিখন প্ৰশান্ত মহাসাগৰীয় এছিয়া ভ্ৰমণ সংস্থাৰ দ্বাৰা আয়োজিত এখন সন্মিলন হৈছিলে আৰু এই সন্মিলনত বিভিন্ন কথা আলোচনা কৰা হৈছিল আৰু স্মাৰক সংৰক্ষণৰ মুখ্য সমস্যাবিলাক তাত আলোচনা কৰা হৈছিল যিবিলাক সমস্যা স্মাৰকবিলাক যে মেইন প্ৰব্লেমছ ইন কনজাৰ্ভেশ্যন অফ মনুমেণ্টছবিলাকে যাতে আমি কনজাৰ্ভ কৰিব নোৱাৰাৰ কিছুমান সমস্যা আছে আৰু সেইবিলাক ইয়াতে কোৱা হৈছে 1 নম্বৰতে স্মাৰকসমূহ আৰু সেইবোৰ সংৰক্ষণ কৰা সঞ্চয়ৰ গুৰুত্ব সম্পৰ্কে সাধাৰণ ৰাইজৰ মাজত সজাগতা স্থানীয় লোক তেওঁলোকৰ সজাগতাৰ অভাৱৰ কাৰণে যাক আমি বহুত কালচাৰেলি ছ'চিয়েলি ৰিচ বা হেৰিটেজ বুলি যাক আমি কওঁ তেনেকুৱা বস্তু ধ্বংস কৰা হৈছে তেওঁলোকৰ অজ্ঞতা বা অসহযোগৰ কাৰণে স্থানীয় লোকসকলে যদি স্থানীয় লোকসকলে প্ৰত্যক্ষ কৰে বা তাক প্ৰথমতে তেওঁলোকে ব্যৱহাৰ কৰে বা তেওঁলোকে সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰে তেওঁলোকে ধ্বংস কৰিব পাৰে পৰ্যাপ্ত আন্তঃগাঁথনি আৰু জনসংযোগ এইবিলাক সংৰক্ষণ কৰিবৰ কাৰণে যিবিলাক আন্তঃগাঁথনি লাগে যিবিলাক ইনফ্ৰাষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰ লাগে যিবিলাক ব্যৱস্থা লাগে সেইবিলাকৰ অভাৱ আছে আৰু সেইবিলাক চোৱা চিতা কৰিবৰ কাৰণে যিবিলাক মানুহ লাগে সেইবিলাক মানুহৰো অভাৱ আছে তাৰ ফলত আমি যদি ক'ব যাওঁ সেই ব্যৱস্থাটো বিভিন্ন ধৰণে অসুবিধাৰ সন্মুখীন হৈছে স্থানীয় নাগৰিক কৰ্তৃপক্ষৰ উদাসীনতা এইটো এটা সাংঘাতিক কথা যে তাৰ যিবিলাক লোকেল মানুহ আছে স্থানীয় মানুহ আছে তেওঁলোকে এই ক্ষেত্ৰত উদাসীন তেওঁলোকৰ যেনেকৈ কৰিব লাগে নাই তেওঁলোকৰ যেন চাবই নাই আৰু তাৰ ফলত এইবিলাক ধ্বংসৰ পথলৈ গুচি গৈছে দৰ্শনাৰ্থী পৰ্যটকৰ দ্বাৰা ক্ষতি আৰু বিকৃতি দৰ্শনাৰ্থী বা পৰ্যটক যিমানেই আমি ৰেগুলেট নকৰোঁ কিয় ইণ্টেনশ্যন যদি উদ্দেশ্য যদি ভাল নাথাকে বা জ্ঞান যদি নাথাকে বা সজাগতা নাথাকে তাৰ ফলত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হ'ব পাৰে এই সম্পদসমূহ আৰু এই সম্পদসমূহৰ বিকৃতিকৰণ কৰা হ'ব পাৰে। এইবিলাক বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ সমস্যা। আৰু এটা সমস্যা আমি ক'ব পাৰোঁ যে চৰকাৰী আৰু বেচৰকাৰী সংস্থাসমূহৰ মাজত সমন্বয়। নিশ্চিতভাৱে চৰকাৰী সংস্থা আৰু বেচৰকাৰী সংস্থাৰ মাজত সমন্বয় সদায় অভাৱ থাকে। চৰকাৰীভাৱে চৰকাৰী, বেচৰকাৰীভাৱে বেচৰকাৰী। চৰকাৰীৰ এই কামৰ স্পৃহা আৰু বেচৰকাৰী কামৰ স্পৃহাৰ মাজত পাৰ্থক্য আছে। তাৰ ফলত এটা সমন্বয়ৰ অভাৱ পৰিলক্ষিত হোৱা দেখা যায়। আৰু যদি সমন্বয় নাথাকে, এইবিলাক বস্তু জীয়াই ৰখা বা বৰ্তাই ৰখাটো যথেষ্ট কঠিন হয়। ইয়াৰ পিছতে উপলব্ধ বিশেষজ্ঞতা, তো এভেইলেবল এক্সপাৰ্টাইজ। এইবিলাক কৰিবৰ কাৰণে আমি এক্সপাৰ্টাইজ কিয়ে এইবিলাক কাম কৰিব, যিয়ে সংৰক্ষণত সহায় কৰিব, যিয়ে বচাই ৰখাত সহায় কৰিব, সেইবিলাকৰ ভিতৰত যদি আমি চাব যাওঁ, এই কামটো কৰিবলৈ খুব কম সংখ্যক সংস্থাই ইয়াক সঠিক কাৰ্যকৰী দক্ষতাৰ সুবিধা, সংবেদনশীলতা, মেৰামতি, তত্ত্বাৱধান, বিকাশৰ ব্যাপক ব্যৱস্থাপনা স্মাৰকসমূহ লাভ কৰে। আৰু ইয়াতে আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ, তেতিয়াহ'লে আমি দেখিম যে ইয়াত কিছুমান এজেঞ্চি আছে আৰু এই সংস্থা আছে, আৰু সেই সংস্থাবিলাকৰ আমি নাম ল'ব পাৰোঁ। এইবিলাক কৰাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত ভাৰতীয় পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক জৰীপ, যাক আমি ASI বুলি কওঁ, ভাৰতীয় পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক জৰীপ, তেওঁলোকে জৰীপ চলায়, তেওঁলোকে খনন কৰে, তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন ধৰণে অনুসন্ধান কৰে। ৰাজ্যিক পুৰাতত্ত্ব বিভাগ আৰু সংগ্ৰহালয়, ৰাজ্যিক পুৰাতত্ত্ব বিভাগ বুলি এটা আৰ্কিঅলজিকেল ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্ট আছে, তেওঁলোকৰ সংগ্ৰহালয় আছে, কাৰণ সেইবিলাক ৰাখিব লাগিব, তাত সংগ্ৰহ কৰি ৰাখিব লাগিব, তাত মানুহৰ মাজত নিবৰ কাৰণে তাক সংগ্ৰহ কৰি লাগিব, মানুহ জনাব লাগিব, বুজাব লাগিব যে সেইবিলাক তেনেকুৱা সাংস্কৃতিক বা ঐতিহ্য থকা বস্তু বা পৌৰাণিক বস্তু। সংৰক্ষণৰ বাবে ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় গৱেষণাগাৰ, তো গৱেষণাত এইটো লক্ষ্ণৌত আছে, আৰু তাৰ পৰা গৱেষণা কৰে আৰু তাৰ পৰা বিভিন্ন ধৰণে সংৰক্ষণৰ উপায় উদ্ভাৱন কৰে। ইণ্ডিয়ান নেশ্যনেল ট্ৰাষ্ট ফৰ আৰ্ট এণ্ড কালচাৰেল হেৰিটেজ বুলি এটা সংস্থা আছে। হিন্দুস্তান টেৰিটৰিয়েল ট্ৰাষ্ট অফ বিলাস নামৰ এটা সংস্থা আছে, তেওঁলোকে এই দিশত কাম কৰে। সাংস্কৃতিক সংৰক্ষণ আৰু পুনৰুদ্ধাৰৰ অধ্যয়নৰ বাবে আন্তৰ্জাতিক কেন্দ্ৰ সম্পত্তি, তো অকল এইটোৱে স্থানীয়ভাৱে নহয়, আন্তঃৰাষ্ট্ৰীয়ভাৱে আন্তৰ্জাতিকভাৱেও ইয়াৰ ৰক্ষণাবেক্ষণ দিয়াৰ কাৰণে চিন্তা কৰা হয়। আৰু এইবিলাক এটা ইটালীৰ ৰোমত যিটো নেশ্যনেল ট্ৰাষ্ট অফ ইংলেণ্ড, আৰু ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় সংগ্ৰহালয় দিল্লী, আৰু ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় সংগ্ৰহালয় যিটো নেশ্যনেল আমাৰ মিউজিয়াম আছে, সেইটো দিল্লীত আছে। তাতো বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ইয়াৰ সংৰক্ষণৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰা হৈছে। এতিয়া যদি আমি চাব যাওঁ, দৰ্শনাৰ্থীৰ সংখ্যা ব্যৱস্থাৰ প্ৰতি লক্ষ্য ৰাখি আমি কাম কৰিব লাগে। দৰ্শনাৰ্থী যদি বেছি হয়, তেতিয়াহ'লে তাৰ ৰেগুলেট কৰে, কম হয় যদি তাত কোনো কথা নাই। স্মাৰক স্থান আৰু সেইবোৰ ভ্ৰমণ সঠিকভাৱে নিয়ন্ত্ৰণৰ বুজাব লাগে। এতিয়া মূল কথা হৈছে কি, তাৰ স্থান যিবিলাকত মানুহ যায়, সেইবিলাক সঠিকভাৱে নিয়ন্ত্ৰণ কৰিব লাগে, তাক পৰিচালনা কৰিব, তাত যাতে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ বেয়া পৰিৱেশৰ সৃষ্টি নহয়, অভাৰ ক্ৰাউডেড নহয়, আৰু পৰিৱেশ বিনষ্ট নহয়, তাৰ কাৰণে নিয়ন্ত্ৰণ আৰু পৰিচালনা কৰিব লাগে। দৰ্শনাৰ্থী আৰু পৰ্যটকসকলৰ এই সাংস্কৃতিক সম্পত্তিবোৰ মেনেজাৰ আৰু গাইডসকলৰ দ্বাৰা শিক্ষিত কৰা উচিত। তেওঁলোকক মেনেজাৰবিলাকৰ দ্বাৰা গাইডবিলাকৰ দ্বাৰা শিক্ষিত কৰিব লাগে, কাৰণ তেওঁলোকে এটা দায়িত্বশীল আচৰণ কৰিব লাগে। আৰু যিবিলাক লোকে স্মাৰকসমূহৰ ভিতৰলৈ যাব খোজে, তেওঁলোকক পাৰিলে অনুমতি দিয়াৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰিব লাগে, যাতে তেওঁলোকে দেখিবলৈ পায়। এইটো বৰ অনুকৰণীয়, আৰু আমি এই সফলতাৰ পৰা ধাৰণা অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰি আমাৰ নিজৰ পদ্ধতি প্ৰস্তুত কৰিব পাৰোঁ। ঐতিহ্য ব্যৱস্থাপনাৰ আৰ্হি, এই স্মাৰকসমূহৰ পৰা প্ৰৱেশ মাচুল হিচাপে সংগ্ৰহ কৰাৰ বাবে এই স্মাৰকসমূহৰ সংৰক্ষণ কাৰ্যকলাপ অব্যাহত ৰাখিব লাগে। যিবিলাক প্ৰৱেশ মাচুল লোৱা হয় পৰ্যটকৰ পৰা, সেইখিনি যাতে এই স্মাৰকসমূহ সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব পাৰি, তাৰ কাৰণে টকাখিনি ঘূৰাই দিব লাগে, আৰু তেওঁলোকে কাম কৰি পেলাই এই ব্যৱস্থাটো যাতে কৰিব পাৰে। আগ্ৰাত আমি দেখিবলৈ পাইছোঁ বিখ্যাত তাজমহল আছে, আৰু তাৰ পৰিৱেশ প্ৰদূষণৰ ভাবুকি আহিছে, আৰু তাত বাহ্যিক প্ৰদূষণকাৰী আৰু ক্ষতিকাৰক কাৰকৰ প্ৰতি এই স্মাৰকসমূহ সংবেদনশীল য'ত বায়ু, শব্দ, পানী প্ৰদূষণ বা পৰ্যটনৰ নেতিবাচক অৰ্থনৈতিক কাৰ্যকলাপক নেতিবাচক কৰে। যদি আমি তাত বন্ধ কৰোঁ, তেতিয়াহ'লে অৰ্থনৈতিক বিপৰ্যয়। যদি আমি বন্ধ নকৰোঁ, তেতিয়াহ'লে তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পৰিৱেশ বিনষ্ট হ'ব প্ৰদূষণৰ যোগেদি। বৃহৎ সংখ্যক ঐতিহাসিক স্মাৰক ঘৰ আৰু অট্টালিকা ভাৰতৰ পুৰাতাত্ত্বিক জৰীপৰ ৰাজ্য চৰকাৰৰ দ্বাৰা সুৰক্ষিত স্মাৰকসমূহৰ তালিকা সংস্থাসমূহ অধীনত ঘোষণা কৰা হয়। যদিও আছে এই সংস্থাসমূহৰ অধীনত তেনেধৰণে কোনো ঘোষণা কৰা হয়। এইবোৰ মানুহ আৰু বাণিজ্যিক স্বাৰ্থৰ দ্বাৰা নিয়মীয়াভাৱে লুণ্ঠন কৰা হৈছে। ইয়াত কি কৰা হৈছে, মানুহবিলাকে তেওঁলোকে নিজৰ ব্যৱসায়িক উদ্দেশ্য আগত ৰাখি তেওঁলোকে লুণ্ঠন কৰিছে, সম্পত্তি ধ্বংস কৰিছে, তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন ধৰণে ধ্বংস কৰিছে। আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ, তেওঁলোকে শিল, দুৱাৰ, আলংকাৰিক মোটিভ আৰু ভাস্কৰ্য উলিয়াই বিক্ৰী কৰা হয়। এইবিলাক উলিয়াই তেওঁলোকে বিক্ৰী কৰে। আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ ৰাজস্থান আৰু গুজৰাটৰ ঘৰবোৰ যাৰ দুৱাৰ আৰু খিৰিকী উলিয়াই দিয়া হৈছে। তাৰ ঘৰ দুৱাৰবিলাক এই হেৰিটেজ চাইট বা কালচাৰেল চাইটৰ দুৱাৰ খিৰিকীবিলাক উলিয়াই দিয়া হৈছে আৰু এণ্টিক হিচাপে তাক এণ্টিক মানে যিটো দুৰ্লভ সেই হিচাপে তাক বিক্ৰী কৰা হৈছে। এই প্ৰক্ৰিয়াটোত ঘৰৰ তললৈ টানি অনা হৈছে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ ঘৰৰ কাৰণ তাত ক্ষতিগ্ৰস্ত হৈছে। ইয়াত প্ৰচেষ্টাসমূহ স্থানীয় সংস্থা, স্বেচ্ছাসেৱী সংস্থা আৰু স্থানীয় লোকসকলে সম্প্ৰসাৰিত কৰাৰ জৰুৰী প্ৰয়োজন। তেওঁলোকে অসাধু ব্যৱসায়ৰ পৰা বচাবলৈ সুৰক্ষামূলকভাৱে হাত আগবঢ়াব লাগিব। কাৰণ স্থানীয় লোকসকল সদায় আগত থাকে, স্থানীয় লোকসকলে প্ৰচেষ্টা ল'ব লাগিব আৰু তাত যিবিলাক স্বেচ্ছাসেৱী সংস্থা আছে সেইবিলাকে সিহঁতক সহায় কৰাব লাগিব যাতে তাৰ উন্নয়ন হয়। সংৰক্ষণ আৰু সংৰক্ষণ আমি যদি এতিয়া চাব যাওঁ, আমি দেখিম যে কনজাৰভেশ্যন এণ্ড প্ৰিজাৰ্ভেশ্যন অফ আৰ্টিষ্টিক এণ্ড কালচাৰেল হেৰিটেজ, শৈল্পিক আৰু সাংস্কৃতিক যিটো আমাৰ ঐতিহ্য আছে তাক আমি সংৰক্ষণ কেনেধৰণে কৰিম? আমি বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ বিন্দুত উপনীত হ'ব পাৰোঁ আৰু আমি বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আমি বজাৰ আমি ব্যৱহাৰ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। ভাৰতৰ এক সাংস্কৃতিক গন্তব্যস্থান। ভাৰতৰ বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ মানুহ ইয়াত আহে। আমাৰ দেশলৈ অহা পৰ্যটক হিচাপে জনা যায় নিম্নলিখিত ৰূপবোৰ আমাৰ শৈক্ষিক আৰু সাংস্কৃতিক অভিব্যক্তিবোৰ চাবলৈ উঠিয়াই। তো আমাৰ সাংস্কৃতিক, শৈক্ষিক, ৰিলিজিয়াছ বা অন্যান্য যিবিলাক অভিব্যক্তি আছে তেওঁলোকে চাবলৈ আগ্ৰহী। স্থাপত্য ধ্বংস কৰে। এই যিবিলাক স্থাপত্য আছে, যিবিলাক আৰ্কিঅলজিকেল আমাৰ ৰিলিক্স আছে, সেই ধ্বংস সেইবিলাক তেওঁলোকে চাবলৈ আহে। ভাস্কৰ্য মন্দিৰ, য'ত স্কাল্পচাৰ বা আমি টেম্পলছ বুলি কওঁ, কেনেধৰণে বনাইছে, তাৰ কলা, তাৰ কৌশল, তাৰ মেটেৰিয়েল ইউজ, কোনে বনাইছে সেইবিলাক অনুসন্ধান কৰিবলৈ কোৱা হয়। চিত্ৰবোৰ, তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ চিত্ৰ আছে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পেইণ্টিংছ আছে, সেইবিলাক চাবলৈও মানুহ তাত প্ৰৱেশ কৰে। তাৰপিছত লোকসংগীত, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ আমাৰ ফক মিউজিক আছে, সেই বিষয়ে বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আমাৰ মানুহবিলাক তাত ব্যস্ত হয়। তাৰপিছত আমি দেখিম মেলা, উৎসৱ, তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ মেলা হয়, তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ উৎসৱ হৈছে, ফেয়াৰ এণ্ড ফেষ্টিভেলছ। ফেয়াৰ এণ্ড ফেষ্টিভেলত বিভিন্ন দেশৰ বিভিন্ন ৰাজ্যৰ মানুহ তাত যোগদান কৰে আৰু তাৰ পৰা তেওঁলোকে আদান প্ৰদান বা তাৰ পৰা তেওঁলোকে যিটো আমি ক'ব খোজোঁ তেওঁলোকে তাৰ পৰা উৎসাহ উদ্দীপনা লাভ কৰে। ৰীতি নীতিৰ কথা আছে, ৰীতি নীতিবিলাকক কেনেধৰণে পালন কৰা হ'ব, কি ৰীতি পালন কৰা হ'ব, কি নীতি পালন কৰা হ'ব, কেনেকৈ চলিব লাগিব। তাৰপিছত আমি সাহিত্য আৰু কলাৰ কথা ক'ব পাৰোঁ। সাহিত্য আৰু কলা, সাহিত্য লিটাৰেচাৰ আৰু আমি যদি চাওঁ লিটাৰেচাৰ, সাহিত্য আৰু কবিতা, লিটাৰেচাৰ আৰু পয়েট্ৰি। সাহিত্য বেলেগ ফালে যায়, কবিতা বেলেগ ফালে যায়। হস্তশিল্প, সেই সময়ত হেণ্ডিক্ৰাফ্টছৰ প্ৰচুৰ প্ৰচলন বা ব্যৱহাৰ আছিলে আৰু মানুহে নিজৰ প্ৰয়োজনখিনি হস্তশিল্পৰ যোগেদি উৎপাদন কৰি ল'বলৈ সক্ষম হৈছে। কুইজিন আৰু আমাৰ জীৱনশৈলী, যিটো আমাৰ খাদ্য আৰু আমাৰ লাইফষ্টাইল, আমি কেনেধৰণে জীয়াই থাকিব, কি খাদ্য খাওঁ, কেনেধৰণে জীয়াই থাকিব। যদিও দৰ্শনীসকলক আমাৰ পৰিৱেশ পৰ্যবেক্ষণ বুজিবলৈ আৰু আনকি অংশগ্ৰহণ কৰিবলৈ স্বাগতম জনোৱা হয়, উদযাপন কিন্তু আমাৰ ঐতিহাসিক প্ৰভাৱিত হোৱাৰ পৰা সুৰক্ষিত কৰা উচিত দৰ্শনৰ এটি জীৱনশৈলী চিন্তা। আন্তৰ্জাতিক পৰ্যটকসকলৰ মাজত অত্যন্ত জনপ্ৰিয় আমাৰ বেছিভাগ মেলা আৰু উৎসৱ এতিয়া লাহে লাহে বাহিৰৰ পৰ্যটকৰ অত্যাধিক প্ৰবাহৰ দৰে এই বিদ্যমান হৈছে। যে আগতে আমাৰ স্থানীয় লোকসকলে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ উৎসৱ পাৰ্বণ বা মেলালৈকে গৈছিল আৰু পৰৱৰ্তী কালত বিদেশী পৰ্যটকসকলে তাত আহি উপস্থিত হয় আৰু বিভিন্ন ধৰণে বিভিন্ন সংস্কৃতিলৈকে তেওঁলোকে আহে। ৰাজস্থান ইয়াৰে বহুতো ৰাজস্থানত বহুতো মেলা হয় আৰু বহুতো উৎসৱ হয় আৰু তাত পুষ্কৰ মেলা হৈছিল আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পৰিৱৰ্তন দেখাইছিলে ধৰ্মীয় উৎসৱৰে ইয়াত এই যি গৰু মেলা কেটেল মেলা হয় এতিয়া প্ৰায় পৰ্যটক মেলাত পৰিণত হৈছে আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পৰ্যটক উপস্থিত হয় আৰু বৃহৎ সংখ্যক পৰ্যটকৰ কাৰণে নেতিবাচক প্ৰভাৱো আছে অকল পজিটিভ নহয় যে বহুত সংখ্যক পৰ্যটককাৰীৰ কাৰণে তাত নেতিবাচক প্ৰভাৱো পৰিছে নিষিদ্ধ পৃষ্ঠাৰ ঔষধ হৈছে এক নেতিবাচক বৈশিষ্ট্য যিটো ইমান জনপ্ৰিয় হোৱাৰ পিছৰে পৰা লক্ষ্য কৰা হৈছে পৰ্যটকৰ সৈতে একে সময়তে এই বিদেশী পৰ্যটকসকলে উদাৰ জীৱনশৈলীয়ে বিৰূপ প্ৰভাৱ পেলাইছে পুষ্কৰ দৰে সৰু ঠাইত সমস্তাত্ত্বিক সমীকৰণ আৰু আচৰণ সাংস্কৃতিক প্ৰদূষণৰ আন এটা উদাহৰণ হৈছে চিত্ৰকলাৰ প্ৰমাণিক ভাৰতীয় শৈলীভিত্তিক কৰা দৰ্শনাৰ্থী পৰ্যটকৰ সোৱাদৰ সৈতে খাপ খোৱাকৈ ইয়াত প্ৰস্তুত কৰিবলৈ সংগীত আৰু নৃত্য দৰিদ্ৰ শিল্পীসকলে পৰি যায় তেওঁলোকৰ ধৰণৰ ধন নাথাকে আৰু তেওঁলোকে লোভৰ প্ৰলোভনত পৰি যায় আৰু তেওঁলোকে চিকাৰ হয় আৰু বজাৰৰ প্ৰয়োজনীয়তাৰ সৈতে খাপ খোৱাকৈ তেওঁলোকে প্ৰেজেণ্টেশ্যনৰ শৈলী সলনি কৰে আৰু তেওঁলোকে শৈল্পিক ব্যৱহৃত বিৱৰণৰ প্ৰতি লক্ষ্য ৰাখি বিভিন্ন ধৰণে সালসলনি কৰে হস্তশিল্প তলৰ বজাৰত চাহিদাৰ ওপৰত পৰিৱৰ্তনলৈ আছে এতিয়া যদি আমি চাব যাওঁ ইয়াত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ কৰ্তৃপক্ষ আছে দৰ্শনীয় কলাসমূহৰ বিষয়ে শিক্ষিত কৰিব পাৰে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পদক্ষেপ ল'ব পাৰে আৰু বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ ব্যৱস্থা গ্ৰহণ কৰিব পাৰে আৰু পৰ্যটকসকলে ইয়াৰে সৈতে খেলি মেলি নকৰাকৈ কলাটো উপভোগ কৰিবলৈ অনুমতি দিয়ে এতিয়া আমি চাব যাওঁ যে বিশেষকৈ চাৰিওফালে ভিক্ষাৰী আৰু কুষ্ঠৰোগীৰ সংখ্যা উদ্বেগজনকভাৱে বৃদ্ধি পাইছে পৰ্যটনস্থলত চাৰিওফালে বিশেষকৈ ভিক্ষাৰী আৰু কুষ্ঠৰোগীৰ সংখ্যা উদ্বেগজনকভাৱে বৃদ্ধি পাইছে বহুত বেছি তাত বৃদ্ধি পাইছে আৰু সেইটোৱে নিশ্চিত ৰূপে বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ ক্ষতিৰ সন্মুখীন কৰাব এই উপাদানবোৰে কেৱল আমাৰ দেশৰ এক বেয়া প্ৰতিচ্ছবি নহয় কিন্তু হাৰাশাস্তিও কৰে তো এই যিবিলাক ভিক্ষাৰী বা কুষ্ঠৰোগী আছে এই যিবিলাক উপাদান আছে আমাৰ দেশৰ এটা চব বেয়া প্ৰতিচ্ছবিটো হয় দেশৰ মানুহে ভিক্ষা খুজিবলগীয়া হৈছে মানুহে কুষ্ঠৰোগত আক্ৰান্ত হৈছে অৰ্থাৎ মেডিকেল ব্যৱস্থা বিফল তাৰপিছত সমাজ ব্যৱস্থা বিফল অৰ্থনৈতিক ব্যৱস্থা বিফল আৰু ই এটা বিৰূপ প্ৰভাৱ পেলায় ইয়াৰ ফলত সেইবোৰ কেৱল আমাৰ দেশত এক বেয়া প্ৰতিচ্ছবি নহয় কিন্তু হাৰাশাস্তি কৰে আৰু এই যিবিলাক দেশতো হয় যি হয় আৰু দৰ্শনাৰ্থী বা পৰ্যটকসকলে এই কি কৰিব তেওঁলোকক বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তেওঁলোকক আমনি কৰে দান বৰঙণি আগবঢ়াব লাগে আৰু কেতিয়াবা পৰ্যটকৰ মনোভাৱ নষ্টও কৰি দিয়ে যাৰ ফলত পৰিহাৰযোগ্য অপ্ৰীতিকৰ পৰিস্থিতিৰ সৃষ্টি হয় নিশ্চিত ৰূপে এইবিলাকে যদি বিৰক্ত কৰে মানুহ ইৰিটেটেড হ'ব খং খাব আৰু তাৰ ফলত বিভিন্ন পৰিস্থিতিৰ সৃষ্টি হ'ব পাৰে সংৰক্ষণৰ বাবে পৰ্যটন উপাৰ্জন অন্তত অংশটো আমি যদি ঘূৰাই আনো আৰু ই যথেষ্ট প্ৰয়োজন আছে আৰু আমাৰ পৰম্পৰাগত কলা ৰূপ আৰু আমাৰ সাংস্কৃতিক ঐতিহ্যৰ বিকাশ যাতে নিশ্চিত ৰূপে বিকাশ হ'ব আৰ্থসামাজিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ এতিয়া আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ আমাৰ আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ কথাটো হৈছে যে আৰ্থসামাজিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ কেনেকৈ আমি আমাৰ অৰ্থনৈতিক সামাজিক ঐতিহ্য সংৰক্ষণ কৰিম কেনেকৈ আমি অৰ্থনৈতিক বিকাশ কৰিম কেনেকৈ আমাৰ সামাজিক বিকাশ কৰিম কেনেকৈ আমাৰ কলা সংস্কৃতি আমি ধৰি ৰাখিম কেনেকৈ তাৰ উন্নয়ন সাধন কৰিম সেই বিষয়ে আমি ইয়াতে বিতংভাৱে আলোচনা কৰিম আমাৰ নতুন অঞ্চলত বৃহৎ সংখ্যক পৰ্যটকক আকৰ্ষিত কৰাৰ বাবে বহুতো ৰাজ্যই কি কৰে বিভিন্ন জেগা মুকলি কৰি দিছে যাতে নতুন পৰ্যটক যাব পাৰে নতুন আকৰ্ষণ হ'ব পাৰে নতুন তাত চিন্তা হ'ব পাৰে নতুন গেডাৰিং হ'ব পাৰে নতুন ব্যৱসায় হ'ব পাৰে নতুন মানুহৰ নিয়োগ হ'ব পাৰে অঞ্চলবোৰ মুকলি কৰি দিছে যিবোৰ সমাজতাত্ত্বিকভাৱে অতি ভংগুৰ আৰু সংবেদনশীল অঞ্চল আৰু এই যিবিলাক কৰিছে সেইবিলাক অঞ্চল বিভিন্ন ধৰণে অসুবিধা থকা অঞ্চল আৰু বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ সমস্যা থকা অঞ্চল তাৰে ভিতৰত যদি আমি চাব যাওঁ মৰুভূমি অঞ্চল মৰুভূমি বুলি কোৱা ল'লে ডেজাৰ্ট মৰুভূমি অঞ্চলত কেনেকৈ আমাৰ ছ'চিঅ' ইকনমিক আমি এই হেৰিটেজ আমি কেনেকৈ কনজাৰ্ভ কৰিম, পাহাৰীয়া অঞ্চলসমূহ, জনজাতীয় এলেকা, উপকূলীয় অঞ্চল, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অঞ্চল আছে, মৰুভূমি অঞ্চল আছে। মৰুভূমি কোৱাৰ লগে লগে মৰুভূমি য'ত নেকি গছ গছনি বা পানী তাত পাবলৈ নাই। পাহাৰীয়া অঞ্চল যিবিলাক হিলি এৰিয়া আছে, পাহাৰীয়া অঞ্চলত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আমি পৰ্যটন বিকাশ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। জনজাতীয় এলেকা আছে যিবিলাক আমাৰ জনজাতীয় ট্ৰাইবেল এৰিয়া আছে, তো সেইবিলাকত আমাৰ বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আমাৰ ছ'চিঅ' ইকনমিক আমি হেৰিটেজ আমি কনজাৰ্ভ কৰিব পাৰোঁ, আমি বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ কামত নিয়োগ হ'ব পাৰোঁ, বিভিন্ন ধৰণে আমি উপকৃত হ'ব পাৰোঁ। জনজাতীয় এলেকা, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ জনজাতীয় লোক আছে আৰু তেওঁলোকৰ এই এলেকাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে এই সেৱা আগবঢ়াব পৰা যায়। পিছত আমি দেখিম যে উপকূলীয় অঞ্চল যিটো আমাৰ কোষ্টেল এৰিয়া আছে, তো পৰ্যটনৰ নেতিবাচক প্ৰভাৱৰ এটা উজ্জ্বল উদাহৰণ আছিল পলমকৈ হিপ্পী সংস্কৃতিৰ বিস্তাৰ। হিপ্পী সংস্কৃতিৰ বিস্তাৰ পলমকৈ হৈছিল আৰু ইয়ে নেতিবাচক প্ৰভাৱ পেলাইছিল। গোৱাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অসুবিধাৰ সন্মুখীন হৈছিল মানুহবিলাক। গোৱাত 70ৰ দশকত যিটো স্থানীয় লোকসকলৰ দ্বাৰা তীব্ৰভাৱে বিৰক্ত হৈছিল। ইমান মানুহ তাত গৈছিলে আৰু তাৰ ফলত তাত যিটো স্থানীয় লোক আছিল তেওঁলোকে বিভিন্ন ধৰণে অসুবিধাৰ সন্মুখীন হৈছিল, বিভিন্ন ধৰণে তেওঁলোকে বিৰক্ত হৈছিল। একেদৰে ইয়াত প্ৰসাৰ কাঠমাণ্ডু, বেনাৰস আৰু পুষ্কৰৰ দৰে ঠাইতলৈকে বিয়পি পৰিছিল। আৰু আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ কথা হৈছিল যে তাতে ড্ৰাগ ব্যৱহাৰ কৰা হৈছিল, ড্ৰাগছ, নিষিদ্ধ বস্তু তাত ব্যৱহাৰ কৰা হৈছিল আৰু তাত বিভিন্ন ঘটনাৰ বিষয়ে উদ্বেগৰ সৃষ্টি কৰিছিল। পাৰিপাৰ্শ্বিক আৰু সাংস্কৃতিকভাৱে সংবেদনশীল অঞ্চল, যিটো অঞ্চল য'ত ৰাজস্থানৰ মৰুভূমিৰ দৰে আৰু জয়ছমেলাৰ দৰে ঠাইত এইডছৰ ঘটনা সংঘটিত হৈছিল। আৰু তাত এইডছৰ ঘটনা সংঘটিত হৈছিল, অৰ্থাৎ তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে প্ৰভাৱ পৰিছিল আৰু তাৰ ফলত তেনেধৰণৰ এটা ডিজিজ হ'বলৈ সক্ষম হৈছিল। আমি চাবলৈ যাওঁ যদি অত্যাধিক হোৱাৰ বাবে এইডছৰ এই ভাইৰাছৰ জয়ছলমেৰত উপস্থিত হৈছিল বুলি বিশ্বাস কৰা হয়। জয়ছমেৰৰ গ্ৰাম্য অঞ্চলত বিদেশী পৰ্যটকৰ চলাচল আৰু থকাটো উপভোগ কৰি আছিল আৰু কেমেল চাফাৰীৰ দৰে জনপ্ৰিয় পৰ্যটন কাৰ্যক্ষম কৰি তুলিছিল। কেমেল চাফাৰী তেওঁলোকে কৰিছিল বিদেশী পৰ্যটকসকলে আৰু তেওঁলোকে আমি দেখিব পালোঁ যে তাত ভাইৰাছ বা তাত এইডছৰ ৰোগে মানুহক পাই গৈছিল। আৰু আমি যদি চাব যাওঁ তেতিয়াহ'লে তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে কুপ্ৰভাৱ পৰিবলৈ ধৰিছিল। তো আমি চাব যাওঁ যে জয়ছমেলৰ দৰে ঠাইত য'ত বছৰি ভ্ৰমণ কৰা পৰ্যটকৰ সংখ্যা স্থানীয় লোকতকৈ 4 গুণতকৈ অধিক হয়। তো তাত যদি স্থানীয় লোক 100 যায় আৰু তাত পৰ্যটকৰ 400 যায়, তাতকৈ বেছি হয়। আৰু তেতিয়া লাহে লাহে আনকি নতুন আৰু যুৱ প্ৰজন্মৰ আচৰণগত আদি কিছুমান দেখুৱাই পৰিৱৰ্তন অবাঞ্ছিত লক্ষণ যি গাঁৱৰ জ্যেষ্ঠসকলৰ মাজত এটা উদ্বেগৰ সৃষ্টি কৰিছে। আৰু তাৰ ফলত কি হয়, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ যুৱ প্ৰজন্মৰ মাজত বিভিন্ন আৰ্হি নমুনাই গা কৰি উঠে আৰু জ্যেষ্ঠসকল যিবিলাক থাকে ঘৰৰ তেওঁলোকে তাৰ কাৰণে উত্তেজিত হৈ পৰা দেখিবলৈ পোৱা যায়। তাৰপিছত আমি দেখিম আন এটা উদাহৰণ আছিল, আৰু এটা উদাহৰণ আমি ইয়াতে পাব পাৰিম, আৰু সেই উদাহৰণটো হৈছে যে বেনেশ্বৰৰ যিটো ডুংগৰপুৰ ৰাজস্থানত আছে, তাত বিখ্যাত জনজাতীয় মেলা হয়। তাত এখন বিখ্যাত জনজাতীয় মেলা হয় আৰু ইয়াৰ এটা বিশেষ বৈশিষ্ট্য আছে। এই জনজাতীয় যিখন মেলা হয় তাত আকৰ্ষিত জনজাতীয়সকলৰ বৃহৎ মণ্ডলীৰ দ্বাৰা আৰু ব্যাপক প্ৰচাৰ আৰু আক্ৰমণাত্মক বিপণনৰ বাবে শ বিদেশী পৰ্যটকৰ মেলাখন ভ্ৰমণ কৰিবলৈ আৰম্ভ কৰিছিল। তো আমি যদি চাওঁ ইয়াত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে জনজাতীয় লোকসকলৰ মাজত এই মেলাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণে শ বিদেশী পৰ্যটকে ভ্ৰমণ কৰিছিল আৰু নিৰ্দেশনা আৰু সঠিক অভাৱৰ বাবে পৰ্যটকসকলে তেওঁলোকৰ ট্ৰেভেল এজেণ্টৰ দ্বাৰা ব্ৰিফিং কৰা কিছুমান পৰ্যটক যুৱ জনজাতীয় লোকৰ তেওঁলোকে কি কৰিছিল যে গা ধুই থকা অৱস্থাত কিছুমান ছোৱালীয়ে এই জনজাতীয় লোকসকলক গা ধুই থকা অৱস্থাত কিছুমান ফটো উঠা হৈছিল। আৰু এই ফটোবিলাক এই বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ সমস্যাৰ সৃষ্টি হৈছিল আৰু এইয়ে তেওঁলোকক আলোচনাত্মক আক্ৰমণ জনাইছিল। মানুহ আৰু প্ৰেছৰ বহুতো প্ৰবন্ধ পবিত্ৰতা গোপনীয়তা বেদখল কৰাৰ বিৰুদ্ধে প্ৰকাশ পাইছিল। এই মেলাৰ ফলস্বৰূপে কৰ্তৃপক্ষই পৰ্যটকসকলৰ বাবে ভেনেশ্বৰ মেলাৰ প্ৰচাৰ বন্ধ কৰি দিছিল। যদিও আমি চাব যাওঁ পৰ্যটন প্ৰচাৰ এনে সংবেদনশীল ক্ষেত্ৰ কৰ্তৃপক্ষই নিম্নলিখিত বিন্দুবোৰ মনত ৰাখিব লাগিব। তো চাব লাগিব কেৰিং কেপাচিটি অফ দা হোষ্ট ইক'চিষ্টেম। আমাৰ কিমান কেপাচিটি আছে, কিমান আমি আমাৰ চিষ্টেমলৈকে আমি কিমান মানুহ কিমান পৰ্যটন আমি ৰাখিব পাৰোঁ, কিমান আনিব পাৰোঁ, কিমান মানুহ আমি সেই নিৰ্দিষ্ট ছাইটটোলৈকে আমি লৈ যাব পাৰোঁ। মেলাৰ উৎসৱৰ বিশেষ প্ৰকৃতি যে মেলাৰ যিখন উৎসৱ স্পেচিয়েল নেচাৰ অফ দ্য ফেয়াৰ এণ্ড ফেষ্টিভেল। এই যে ফেয়াৰ এণ্ড ফেষ্টিভেল থাকিব নিজৰ এটা চৰিত্ৰ থাকে, সেইখন কিহক লৈ কৰা, কাপোৰক লৈ কৰা মেলা নে ইলেক্ট্ৰনিক্সক লৈ কৰা নে অন্য কিবাক লৈ কৰা মেলা, সেই বস্তুটো আমি এই মেলা উৎসৱৰ বিশেষ প্ৰকৃতি। আমি তাৰপিছত আমি দেখিম যে স্থানীয় লোকসকলৰ সংবেদনশীলতা। আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ কথাটো হৈছে কি এই টুৰিজিম প্ৰমোট কৰাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত আমাৰ স্থানীয় যিবিলাক লোক আছে তেওঁলোকে চেনচিটিভ হ'ব লাগিব, তেওঁলোকে সংবেদনশীল হ'ব লাগিব। বা তেওঁলোকে যদি সংবেদনশীল হয় নিশ্চয়কৈ টুৰিষ্টসকলে বা টুৰিজিম ক্ষেত্ৰত বা আমাৰ পৰম্পৰা ৰক্ষা কৰাৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত বিশেষভাৱে লাভান্বিত হ'ব। তাৰপিছতে তেওঁলোক যদি স্থানীয় লোকসকল সংবেদনশীল হয় তেতিয়াহ'লে তাৰ ধ্বংস সহজতে কৰিব নোৱাৰে। তেওঁলোকে তাৰ উপযুক্ত প্ৰটেকশ্যন নিৰাপত্তা দি তাক সংৰক্ষণ কৰাৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰিব পাৰে, অন্যথা তেওঁলোকে তাক পুনৰ নিৰ্মাণ কৰিব পাৰে। দৰ্শনীয়সকলে কৰিব লগা আৰু নকৰিব লগা সম্পৰ্কে শিক্ষিত কৰা যিবিলাক থাকিব তাত দৰ্শনাৰ্থী তেওঁলোকে যাতে কি কৰিব লাগে আৰু কি কৰিব নালাগে সেই সম্বন্ধে তেওঁলোকক শিক্ষা দিব লাগিব, তেওঁলোকক জ্ঞান দিব লাগিব আৰু তাৰ ফলত তেওঁলোকে সেইবিলাক কাম তেওঁলোকে নকৰিব। সেইকাৰণে তেওঁলোকক সেই বিষয়ে বিশেষভাৱে জ্ঞান দিয়াটো অতি প্ৰয়োজন। বিশেষকৈ জনজাতীয় লোকসকলৰ ওচৰত বিদেশী পৰ্যটক দীঘলীয়া সময় ৰখাৰ এটা নিশ্চয় কৰিব লাগে, যাতে জনজাতীয় লোকসকলে যাতে বেছিদিন থাকিব নোৱাৰে। কাৰণ জনজাতীয় লোকসকল যদি বেছিদিন থাকে তাত বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ অসুবিধাৰ সন্মুখীন হ'ব পাৰে, বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ পৰিৱেশ বিনষ্ট হ'ব পাৰে। সামৰণি